Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV. What a big milestone we are reaching tonight here in V8SCOPS. Round 2 of the 2024 season at Phillip Island contains the 200th V8SCOPS race on record. What a fantastic milestone to reach. We'll be going through some of the big stats from the last 10 years over the course of this broadcast. But of course, we have to welcome you all to virtual Phillip Island in Cowes, Victoria, Australia, to bring it to you all live here on SimSpeed TV, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch and Kick. It's me, Reese Gardner, Scott Rankin, alongside me in the comms box, Jay Kennedy, pressing all the buttons behind the scenes as he did in the very first round of V8SCOPS back in 2014. Scott, a lot has changed over the years, but a lot has stayed the same as well. One of the things that has stayed the same is that V8SCOPS brings memorable action at some of Australia's most legendary circuits.
Oh boy, doesn't it? I mean, it's such an honor to be here for season number 10. Yeah, my first ever Scops broadcast this year. So I'm excited on that, and it's really interesting to note the contrasting ends of careers and bits and pieces as well that's going on. Here I am starting to enjoy my commentary work at this side of thing, but there are so many people in the background that have been here for such a long period of time that they're at the other side of things. I really love that dynamic. 10 years of V8SCOPS action and 200 rounds. My word, what a unique occasion this is.
Yeah, indeed, and I think it's fitting that it also takes place at the site of the first ever SimSpeed broadcast back when we were known as V8s Online. Phillip Island Grand Prix Circuit in Victoria. The first Australian track to be added to the iRacing service all the way back in 2010, I believe, 2011 even. It's been a very long time that this track has been on iRacing. Started with the original Ford Falcon FG V8, and no surprise to see that this has been the scene of many races over the course of Australia NZ sim racing history, some of the most memorable ones as well. Phillip Island, a legendary track, Scott. It is fast, it is flowing, it's got plenty of overtaking opportunities, and it's got corners that are terribly difficult to get right.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's you look at that track layout and you look at that on the surface much the same way as we can look and consider Bathurst, and it's a very unassuming layout. And then you get into the 3D aspect of it, all the climbing, all the off-camber braking zones. there are elements about this track that I think there are only existing in one or two other tracks in the world. And that's really, really interesting to consider as well. Where else do you go when you've got a corner like the Southern Loop that rises and then falls throughout the duration of the corner? There are so many limited opportunities for something like that to occur within the world. Lukey Heights, the crest, you're just trying to keep the car on the road at the crest of the hill, get some power down, maintain some momentum, and then you've got to fall away into a braking zone at MG. There is nothing else like that. I mean, Skyline doesn't have that real effect to it. Skyline down to the S's, it's just so unique. And I think one of the things that we sort of look at Phillip Island sometimes, we go, yeah, I've been to Phillip Island a bunch of times, but what we should really be considering is it's a great track for Formula Racing. It's just a great racetrack. This place is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Of course, most famous for being the host of the Australian Motorcycle Grand Prix, and also technically the birthplace of the Bathurst 1000 as well. Started as the Armstrong 500 here at Phillip Island before moving to Mount Panorama when Phillip Island suffered some financial and infrastructural issues. But it came back strong in the late 1980s, did Phillip Island, and it has been the scene of so much since. So here's how things are going to start off tonight with Split 2 action. We have a single 25-lap race coming up. Fuel capped at 60%, grid set from pre-qualifying results. Of course, the top three are invited to race in top split later on in the night, Scott. A little bit of a change from what was originally planned. It was originally supposed to be a 2-race session, but due to issues with the heat system and manually setting grids, we are going for the single race tonight. Should still be interesting, with a pit stop likely required.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you look at it, you go, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we could really set it this way? And in real life, you absolutely would run it that way. But, such is the world of computers. They do exactly what they're capable of. And when you tell them to do something, they do exactly that thing, and they're not capable of anything else. But hey, look, I mean, they've found a way around it. That's the real key to that, bits and pieces. But fuel capped at 60%, still going to give us that little bit of a pit stop. There's still stuff to think of in the back of your mind about when are we going to take this. Safety cars are a threat. You can't sit down at Phillip Island and go, safety cars aren't a threat. You get elbowed off at turn 1. It's a long recovery drive, although it's a little bit easier these days since the grass changes. MG, how many times have we seen a car barrel off in the sim racing world down the inside coming over Lukey Heights? So the outside at Lukey Heights becomes the inside at MG, cleans somebody out. That's just racing. That's race car, driving. We expect some of that. So Honda Corner also, has little bits and pieces and elements of that if we get two cars side by side. So don't think for a moment that we're not going to get a safety car here tonight. Absolutely. I would put it around 65 to 70% is probably where I'm feeling on a safety car. It's definitely possible, a little bit more likely, but there is definitely a world where I see a no safety car race.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's definitely going to be a lot of grip available out there to the drivers. We're racing in the morning here, about 8:20 a.m. In sim time. 20-degree track temperature, also air temperature as well. And that is right in the zone for optimum conditions for driving, I think, in iRacing, because there's so much grip available. You're able to carry a lot of speed through the corners. You don't have to worry so much about the car's rear end sliding out on you on corner exit. You don't have to worry as much about understeer either. You can afford to run a bit more of an aggressive setup than you otherwise might in warmer weather. But the flip side of that is that the tires will take a little bit longer to get up to their operating temperature. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem in these cars, though, because they've got so much grip straight out of the box.
Yeah, and downforce and leaning on things, and we always talk about it, right? You got to conserve your tires for that qualifying lap. Heat's just something to be trying to shed as much as possible. Keep yourself away from that. 10 years worth of history, 11 seasons worth of history as of this season, so I've been politely informed. 10 years worth of racing action, 11 seasons worth of history in terms of tonight's proceedings, and this will be an interesting opportunity. Sean McNamara, by the way, set the fastest lap time in the practice session as we currently stand. Look for him to be a little bit aggressive. The fact that he hasn't qualified for top split based upon pre-qualifying times is probably a little bit of a statement. Says that maybe he's not, necessarily as comfortable as he'd like to be in this specific condition set. There's a number of drivers that I look at the top of things is, really, really tight. And the lap time between first and second, there's nothing in it. Thousandth of a second? Well, there's just enough to say there's a gap there.
Yeah, there is a gap, something that resembles a gap, but it's not much at all. And incidentally, Sean McNamara and Damien Johnstone, in that order, will be your front row of this Split 2 grid, as Matt Bowler, who did qualify, pre-qualify 33rd, and thus would have had pole position for Split 2, has unfortunately had to withdraw from tonight's proceedings. So that moves McNamara, Johnstone, etc. up a spot. Should be very interesting to see how they capitalize on that. Both McNamara and Johnstone, very competitive, capable drivers in and of themselves. So this is going to be a difficult round regardless. I do think McNamara has a slight edge over Johnstone. I mean, you can see it on the timing screens, but Johnstone is going to give him the race of his life, I'm sure.
Well, it's really, really interesting to have a look at a couple of the other names, particularly from the practice server, that are right there and relevant as well. Robert Crisdale is just one of those names that's just sort of been lurking. I don't necessarily feel as if he's been at his best. I don't necessarily think he's comfortable at the moment. He's had a couple of really, really strong splash in the pan, splash in the water style finishes in terms of V8 veterans. But remembering the differences and the contrast here with V8 vets being fixed session conditions with a fixed setup, that says to me, and I think Bruce Tannock's another very, very good example of that. I don't think you can always say what kind of a driver someone is based off a fixed setup league. It's sort of how do they respond to the setup? How did they respond to changing their driving style? I always really love that dynamic too. You know, drivers that adjust well to specific conditions that are in front of them versus the drivers that I've got to have the car set and feeling my way. You know, there are some drivers that are just raw hot lap drivers, and that's what they're absolutely capable of doing. And then there's some drivers that go, yep, conditions have changed. I've lost 5 degrees worth of track temperature. I can push it a little bit more here, and they respond really, really quickly, and their brains are switched on. So when you look at things, I think in terms of things, I'd really like to see a little bit more from Crisdale. I can see he's capable of it. So look, I've always got a soft place in my heart for him, actually. I've always liked to see him doing well because he's just such a lovely guy.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting Rob in real life. We both live in Perth, Western Australia, so I had the opportunity to meet him face to face and really enjoyed my time with him. He's definitely got a lot going for him in this field considering that pace, but remember, we'll have to wait until the actual grid to see where exactly he'll be placing, because there's been a few withdrawals from tonight. Ryan O'Sullivan was also withdrawing from tonight's Split 2 race, so replacing those two, promoted to Split 2 starting positions, Matthew Scholes and Michael Angus. Looks like Rob Crisdale was actually a reserve before the server went up, so potentially he's had the opportunity to jump on in. Also see James Chastanerf is in Split 2 here for Banter Alliance Racing. He's been a driver that's appeared a couple of times in Split 1 competition, but we usually see him in Split 2.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in and around. He's certainly had runs the pace. The driver I'd like to circle in on is Matthew Scholes, because that's a new program actually. They've Matthew Scholes. Oh, there's about 3 guys that have just recently broken away from the Riot Sim Racing outfit, and Scholes is one of them, and they've now gone with this 801 Sim Racing program. So this is a very, very new outfit, sort of testing the waters of running together in terms of things. It wasn't a bad breakup. It wasn't like one of those breakups that went, there was an argument in the team or anything like that. What's effectively sort of happened in the background of that relationship there was that the V8 supercar drivers at Riot Sim Racing they weren't doing enough V8 supercar racing. They really wanted to. That was their whole focus of the breakaway. Was we wanted to really zero back in on our V8 supercar racing, and that's why 801 Sim Racing sort of formed. And so that. There's still really good relationships between those sorts of teams. They'll probably work together in terms of running endurance races together, trying to get teams together for that sort of an outfit. But in terms of things, they wanted to go their own way, do their own thing. One of the downsides of that is in terms of setups. They've not got as many guys to sort of work around with them. It's a newer outfit. They don't have the history in terms of the setup. They're ready to go. So they've got a little bit of a way to go with. I mean, have a look at the growth of Vermilion Sim Sports and what they've achieved. And it's the same sort of thing. You look 12 months ago, 18 months ago, they were starting from scratch and really trying to build themselves up. They've now got a strong base, a strong foundation underneath them. And every single race, you can see them continuing to work their way forward. So, it's interesting dynamics as teams teams come and go, as teams sort of change around. There's been so much movement within who's driving for who at the moment. I don't have a good metaphor for how turbulent the driver market is at the moment, but we've just seen the last 6 months, I think, has seen one of the biggest changes in terms of driver pools and driver bases that we've seen in a good while.
Yeah, I think if the real life Australian touring car scene is a regular thunderstorm, the AusNZ sim racing scene would be a supercell, I think.
Would you say it's a tempest?
Potentially. That's a good opportunity for description there. Only 45 seconds left in practice, but you have a big point there, Scott. There is a lot of movement every single year in the AusNZ community. So many drivers driving for so many different teams, and year on year, at least one of them changes. I don't think we've had a single year where there hasn't been some new outfit starting or some big signing by one of the teams, or a driver moving somewhere else, or having to start from scratch somehow. I think it's just the nature of the beast, really.
I think it's healthy. I think if everything's static and everyone's driving for the same teams year on year, I don't think that's healthy. Like, you've got to surround yourself with different opinions, with different peoples, with different approaches to things. I think it's really, really healthy to continue to do that. So, from that sort of a base, I don't have a problem with it. It's a really, I love the dynamic of the area that we sort of sit in within sim sports. We're closely related. We're the sim. The video gaming equivalent of, there is nothing else that matches this, because we have a direct real world equivalent. There is no other esport on the planet in existence that has that. You can say shooters, but well, what do shooters have in real world? They really only have armies, right? Whereas we're directly parallel to our real world components, but at the same time we're an esport, and it's so unique, that breakdown. Anyway, we're going to go through a grid here.
Yeah, indeed we do. Grid 4, Split 2 in V8SCOPS 2024 Round 2 at Phillip Island. 9.5 Sim Sports on pole position with Sean McNamara at the wheel. Damien Johnston starts alongside him for Synergy Sim Racing. Byron Pierce, Alpha Venturi alongside Altus Australia's Mike Taliancic. Usually see Mike in Split 1, so he's got a lot to play for here. Jamie Dyke for Fishy Motorsports alongside Vermilion, who we were talking about earlier. Zach Rattray White at the wheel of the number 117. Ewan Baker and Michael Whiting start on 7th and 8th positions, and the 5th row of the grid will be taken up by Matt Morris for Nero Power and another fishy car in the form of Blake Delaney.
Throw it back to 11th and 12th is going to be Benjamin Smith in the B Electrical Race on Oz machine, off alongside the ERT driver of Hayden Veld. For 13th and 14th is going to be Justin Wallace and GT IT Race and Oz Esports alongside of David Kirby's Fishy Motorsports car. Moving one row further back, James Chostanov for BAR, off alongside of Ty Delaney's Fishy Motorsports machine, Chris Miller and Chris Coxhead rounding out the 9th row of the grid, and then the 10th row of the grid is going to be that of Justin McLean and Zach McDonald.
Starting out at 21st, we got Andrew Ritchie starting alongside Andre Youssef. Tim Mulford for Phoenix Racing Team starting alongside Synergy's Michael Cracknell, another veteran of the touring car scene here in iRacing. Roy Stonestreet, that's a name that I haven't seen before, starting alongside Michael Stewart. That'll be very interesting. Zach Vlasblom and Brody Sentence, 27th and 28th. The top 30 will be rounded out by Synergy's Brady Baldwin and 9.5's Craig Schultz. Matthew Scholes, who made his way in through reserves, starts alongside Michael Angus and Robert Crisdale, taking up the final spot on the grid. And considering Crisdale's pace in practice, he might be able to move up the grid here. It remains to be seen, though, as the field gets ready to start. Only 30 seconds on the ticker before the green flag flies. It's all about the standing start here at Phillip Island. The field going through a dip in the start-finish straight, and then over to the downhill run to turn 1. Reminder that we have a 25-lap race scheduled. Fuel is capped at 60%, so the drivers will have to make a pit stop somewhere along the way. And the top 3 is the big positions, ready to be decided. They may very well race in top split later on in the night. But the clock hits 0, and we get ready to go here at Phillip Island for split 2 of V8SCOPS. 25 laps on the ticker, And the first begins now. That's an excellent initial getaway from Damian Johnston. He might draw alongside McNamara or even pass him on the way into turn 1. He at least draws alongside. Taliancic up into third spot, got a better start than Byron Pierce, who has fallen back to 6th place as they come into turn 1. Try to make room through Doohan Corner, and Southern Loop is the most difficult corner on the track, I'd imagine. It's very difficult to get the power down out of here and get the best line on the exit, but seems successful for our top 4 who remain in single file. Zach Rattray-White having to defend from Byron Pierce, who's trying to get those positions back as they come into Miller Corner for the first time. Is there going to be any contact through the field? This is one of the big points of the circuit where we usually see someone spinning, but it looks like everyone's got through cleanly.
Yeah, so I was looking at a couple people that got good getaways, bad getaways. Matt Morris in the Neuropower machine got a terrible start, so he'll tumble throughout the order. James Chastanoff had a big moment as he come off the Southern Loop. I think he might have picked up a touch of dirt. He's been sideways already twice on this lap in terms of getting that rear out and underneath him, so he'll be a sort of cork in the bottle. And Zach McDonald just ran off the road at Hayshed as well, just sort of got squeezed out of room. So there's lots of positional squeezing at the moment. Everyone's trying to drop. Oh, there's a huge lock break in the background at MG. Someone's around. It's Miller. Chris Miller's around.
Oh dear, that's our first big incident of the race. It looks like everyone has avoided him, but Miller at a standstill there. He gets it going again, coming out of MG as the first lap is complete for our leaders. Sean McNamara leads from Damian Johnstone as they come across the line. It looks like James Chastanoff was the one who turned Chris Miller around at MG, so we'll get another look at that shortly. But for now, battles going on hard here through the first couple of turns. Look at this pack. This is fantastic. Benjamin Smith, though, running a little bit wide and off the road at Southern Loop. He was alongside Byron Pierce on the way in, and sometimes 2 into 1 just doesn't go.
Yeah, we just know how off camber that is, that Southern Loop exit in terms of things. Chasty just had a really, really horrible... He couldn't get into a rhythm, couldn't settle himself through that first lap. I'm not surprised he's ended up... Oh, there's huge contact on the run of MG. Someone's off the road. It's Michael Cracknell. He got contact. I want to say it was someone... It might have been Tim Mulford, and then Zach Flashbomb had a huge hit in the rear on the run down to Honda. That was huge. Smith's off the road again.
Oh, Benjamin Smith not having a good time here at all in the race on Oz Mustang, and it's looking like Andrew Ritchie is a bit slow through Hayshed as well. So here's the move from Chastanoff, unfortunately a little bit too deep into the corner, and that's what turned Miller around, unfortunately. So race control should be right on that. Oh,
Chris
no!
and Hayden Veld are both around.
Oh, okay, that's pretty massive. That's at MG again. That's one of the big choke points of the circuit. So 2 cars getting going there, Coxhead and McLean, who it seems got involved in a bit of a maelstrom down there. Looks like McLean locked up on the way in and turned around Coxhead.
Yeah, so a couple things to sort of note early. It's not just Chasty now. I think everyone's sort of in this moment, and it's sort of the mood of the race, isn't it? You see that when a couple people sort of start biffing and barging, and there's a little bit from 1 or 2 people, all of a sudden everyone else gets a little bit etchy, antsy, the blood pressure starts to rise. So the guys that are out front, they get to set this really nice, easy, cruisy pace. They're just relaxed. They're making sure they're hitting all their marks. But everyone in that mid-pack, I just don't think these guys have settled into their race mode yet. And I was doing an endurance race last night with Braden Martin. He had the exact same thing go on. There's the contact.
Oh, yeah. Just got it pulled up in time, both of them, and there was secondary contact further back. So the 91 of Benjamin Smith getting tapped off there at Siberia. Well, it's probably going to be another incident that race control will add to their items to go through. But the race is still on, and especially for the lead. Sean McNamara has not been able to get away from Damian Johnstone. Just can't shake him off.
I wonder whether or not Damian Johnston's sort of just watching him and just going, okay, I can match your pace, but I'm going to fuel save a little bit more. Keep an eye on the way that these sort of strategies go together. A couple notes as well from those 2 incidents we just reviewed. I think it was Ty Delaney that was down the inside of Benjamin Smith, who's just sort of elbowed him off at... Oh, there's another one wide at the final corner. Guess who it... Oh, it's Dave Kirby, actually, that's wide at the last corner. So he's, I would say, gotten elbowed off back there as well. And the other one was Brady Baldwin. So Ty Delaney and Brady Baldwin... both are, well, you'd say Ty Delaney, quite young, you know, still, he's got some racecraft under him, but you say that's probably just a little bit of error. But Brady's still getting that racecraft built up and that vehicle strength. Matt Morris is off the loop.
Oh, that's a big off there for Matt Morris. He does keep it out of the wall, though. Got to be careful of the re-entry. Cars will track towards the outside there. McNamara still defensive on Johnston. Taliancic trying to keep Jamie Dyke behind him. This is fantastic. 4 different teams in the top 4. 9-5 Sim Sports leading the way. Synergy Sim Racing, Altus Australia, and Fishy Motorsports. You can't say Split 2 isn't competitive.
No, and look at the driver names that are in that group as well. So, like I said, I think McNamara is a little bit unhappy in terms of things. So this is going to tell the story of what happened to Dave Kirby. So remember what I was saying? Benjamin, is that Benjamin Smith? No, it's not. But it's one of the other Race on Oz cars. So it's Wallace. Now, does he run wide? He runs wide on his own. Okay, so that's all Kirby on his own. So I was just thinking, think about the guys that are around each other in Discord, because when one driver gets a little bit antsy, there's a few expletives sort of let loose, it brings the blood pressure of everyone up. Everyone starts to get a little bit antsy, a little bit cramped. They feel a little bit tighter within their body. They grip the wheel a little bit tighter. That leads to mistakes in and around things. You've got to race manage yourself, but you've also got to manage the emotions of the people around you.
Yeah, exactly right. A lot to keep track of when you're in the midst of a battle. Slight awkward moment. Apparently our race director has lost connection to the server. Dan Yeaman having some internet issues, it seems, but he'll still be able to do his job, I'm sure. The battle for 5th continuing on here. Zach Rattray White is the one who holds on to that position. Ewan Baker up from 7th, trying to get into a top 5 position. Whiting and Pierce giving chase. Now, Byron Pierce, remember, started in 3rd. He's got a lot of time to make up if he wants to get back on the podium.
Yeah, that's a lot. So this will be what happened to Matt Morris. Like, look at the whack there from that's Blake Delaney just in behind him as well. So there was more that went on with that. I think Morris was wide at turn 1. And that meant he had to come out of the gas, and he's sort of trying to still stay to the inside. Delaney thought he was going to drift a little bit wider at turn 2, and this will sort of show it a little bit better. So he gets in really, really hot to turn 1. Delaney tips it in from wider, tries for the big old crisscross, and that's right there. They both jump on the brakes.
Yeah, I think Delaney was hoping that the door would open on the inside, but it didn't. Morris sort of left the door half open there, but you can't walk through a half open door. So Rattray White versus Baker here at the end of lap 5. Who gets the best run into the first turn? The slipstream is with Ewan Baker, and it looks like Rattray White may have gotten on the brakes a little early there just to let him go through, and he can fight another day. Remember, there is likely still a pit stop coming for these drivers, so a pass isn't the end of the world this early on.
Yeah, maybe, Ewan Baker's, remember, he got sort of the elbows out last time out at Canada as well. So I think he's got something that he's sort of putting his hand up and saying, hey, I want to push on a little bit here as well. And I think he's got the opportunity to. Change the lead.
Yep, that is Damian Johnston getting through on Sean McNamara, and that looked like a textbook pass coming into Miller Corner, the first hairpin of the lap. Shasta Nerf getting by Delaney as well. That's up into 11th spot for Shasti. And I think Andre Youssef and Zach McDonald traded places as well. Shasta Nerf, meanwhile, still having some issues shaking off Delaney, and this is why they are right in the midst of a big pack.
And remember, that's Hayden Veld as well, who's already been off in this race. So he's trying to sort himself and get back into the grip of things. He should be inside the top 10. He should be pushing for one of these split 1 promotion positions. But right now, his race hasn't gone the way that he necessarily would have liked. So this is not a spot I'd like to be right now in front of a Hayden Veld with a red mist descending.
Yeah, indeed. Got to look out. Hayden Veld is an aggressive racer, and so is Sean McNamara when the moment takes him. Damian Johnston, though, with a wide line into turn 1, gets it through nicely, but that has all compressed the top 4, I think, that pass. It's allowing Taliancic a potential run at 2nd. Meanwhile, look at this. Hayden Veld versus James Shastanerf. This is the battle for 11th place, and Veld is looking super aggressive on the exit here. Straighter exit should give him a tiny bit more momentum, and he'll have the inside for Miller Corner.
Yeah, but is he going to get pinched? Is he going to run him? Is Chastity going to run him all the way to the right-hand side of the road? No, Veld's going to pinch Chastity to the left-hand side. So Veld will eventually get the job done. Still not done. Down the inside, finally runs him out of racetrack, squeezes him, gets that job done. So look at the elbows out race already. I think there's a few people out there tonight that have gone, this is my opportunity to sort of score some big points. I think I'm comfortable here. And what that's created is this whole, I've got to be aggressive from the get-go. I've got to get some really, really good track position before the tyres start to fall off, because that's where I'm strong in this race. I reckon there might be some bigger tyre fall-off tonight for a number of these teams.
Yeah, Phillip Island is generally notorious as a track that's hard on tyres because of so many quick corners. James Chastaneuf, I think, dealing with some of that with a wide exit from Lukey Heights. Meanwhile, further back, there's a lot of melee going on here. Andrew Ritchie defending from Michael Cracknell there, coming into MG. But gets a slightly better exit, does Cracknell, through the second to last corner. Narrower line on entry. That isn't always the best thing, but he manages to keep the momentum up in the slipstream. Meanwhile, McNamara trying to get back past Johnston. Seems like Damien is fully on the defensive now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the fresh head of the nose. I think he's trying to look after the tyres with it as well. But McNamara is right there. I wonder, McNamara looks like he's not saving. So Tally in this position, and this is going to go side by side in the run down to Honda. Tally in this sort of a circumstance. Oh, my word. Matt Morris has just been turned coming out of the southern loop.
Oh, no. We saw Matt Morris off the track at the same location earlier, and I think something else has gone wrong for him there, potentially contact with another car, and this time there's a tiny bit of damage on the 966. The Neuro Power entry has had it very tough here tonight. Let's see how it happened. So Morris trying to get up the inside, and is he turned on the exit? He is.
I think he's come off the inside. You know what? I think he's turned himself off. I think it was Zach Blashbaum, actually.
Yeah, the thing is, sometimes in these cars, when you're on the inside and you understeer a bit out into the car alongside you, the cars make contact in such a way that you get turned around, even though you're on the inside of the corner. So I think that's exactly what happened to Matt Morris there. Battle for the lead has calmed down a little bit, and Damien Johnstone now has some breathing room versus Sean McNamara, but you can't say the same for the battle for third as we have more pitters come in. This time it's Hayden Veld coming in. We've had 4 drivers take to the pits so far. Troy Stonestreet jumped in 5 laps ago. Chris Coxhead pitted on the last lap. Craig Schultz and Andre Youssef have also come into the lane thus far. Looks like David Kirby and Brody Sentence have also joined Hayden Veld in the pit lane too. So look out for those early pitters. They'll try and undercut those around them on tyres. You can change tyres while you have fuel being put in the car. So let's see what kind of pace these guys can get.
Yeah, so interesting to note as well, there's a couple points that I want to make out of these couple guys that are in and around here. If you throw back to Logitech on Wednesday night, Hayden Veld had a phenomenal night, banked a huge deal of points, so he'd be coming in confident. He's already been turned around. I think it's the right call from where he was. He was definitely getting held up on his charge back through the field, definitely can undercut a couple of cars, and then he'll have the speed to stay ahead of them. Andre Youssef is the flip side of that coin. Did not finish in Logitech on Wednesday night, so he would not be quite happy. A lot of damage to the left rear corner of that car. I think that's sort of out of necessity. Same thing, needed to get himself out of queue, but I think he's just going to have a horrid night. I've not seen the best out of Andre Youssef in a V8 supercar. This car just does not seem to suit him. He's a phenomenal Porsche Cup driver, drives a reasonable GT3, but V8 supercars, boy, they're just punishing him.
Yeah, well, I suppose experience will fall his way if he keeps this up. Michael Stewart, meanwhile, racing in 19th position. Zach Vlasblom is behind him at the moment by some way. He's trying to chase down Andrew Ritchie. Now, this will be interesting to see what Stewart can do. He started in 26th and is now in the top 20. Of course, a big part of that is other drivers coming into the pits early, but there's potential with him running long. He might just be able to get it done here, at least on Andrew Ritchie. It's a nice run out of Southern Loop, but he's early on the brakes for Miller. Not much else he can do there. Oh, that's big. That's massive. 3 cars involved. Benjamin Smith, Ty Delaney. That's one of the 9.5 cars as well. Zach McDonald. They've all come together there at Miller, and that looks like a right mess.
I wonder whether or not Zach Mack, no, he's actually got it going again. So he sat there and waited for Ty to get rolling again. In the meantime, though, Blake Delaney, remember that contact we saw down at turn 2? Well, that's got himself a drive-through penalty. And look, you were right at the time. The door wasn't half open, and you still can't punch your way through there. So Ben Smith outbraking himself.
McDonald outbraking himself, more like, and that was what ultimately took out the car of Ty Delaney as well. That's a big shame. Miller Corner is one of those turns where you need to get the braking zone absolutely right. Meanwhile, look at the battle for the lead. It's closed up once again, and it looks like the top 4 have started to bring other drivers in. Ewan Baker on a massive turn of pace. We'll get another view of that incident with Zach McDonald here missing the braking point. Benjamin Smith would have tried to come through on the inside there, but they all ended up stuck in each other.
Yeah, it's difficult. I really think this is probably one of the... Look at this battling for the lead as well, too. So McNamara has responded in terms of tyres. The move from Damian Johnson might have been a little bit opportunist, and now he's going to lean on McNamara just a little bit. Wiggles under acceleration. Taliancic looks for the hole. I wonder, for these guys, all of a sudden, Reese, if they're squabbling like this, Jamie Dyke just pits here and just jumps a lot of them.
Yeah, that's probably what Dyke will be thinking about. At the very least, Baker will be thinking about it too, because Damian Johnston has not been able to keep up the pace here in the lead. He's been backing the rest of the top 5 into each other, and the more time you spend behind a slower car, the more time you end up losing overall. So do any of these guys jump for the pits this time? Yep, there we go. Dyke was thinking about it, and he's decided to go for it. Following him in, Zach Rattray-White and Michael Whiting. This could potentially be the move that gets these guys in a potential podium position.
Yeah, this is critical. So this will be Delaney coming to the lane to serve his penalty before he comes back down and takes the service as well. But the track and the shortness of the pit stop and where it's popping people back out, it's putting you into a clear air at the moment. And the other problem is there's a bunch of guys now have converted to that undercut strategy on everyone else around them. You can't wait too much longer. If you do, they're just going to go racing past. You're going to rejoin in a clustered section of track. You don't want to do that. You want to run in clear air as long as you possibly can. Huge group of cars from 22nd through to 27th who have already done their first stops now, Reese.
Yeah, so we'll see where they come out in relation to all of them. Looks like Jamie Dyke has managed to hold on to his position over everyone else there. Leader of the cars that have taken a stop, and quickest pit stop I've seen so far, 9.6 seconds from Mr. Dyke. So I'm also seeing Vlasblom. He's come out right in the middle of the pack that pitted 4 or 5 laps ago. He's behind Coxhead and Schultz right now and is trying to get past Schultz here. Fresher tyres on the car for Vlasblom, and he might be able to run up the inside here at Miller. He's going to have a look, but maybe a little bit too early on the brakes to get it done. No, he's going to draw alongside on the way in. Michael Angus behind manages to get it done on Brody Sentence and David Kirby too. Schultz, meanwhile, he was bumped out of the way just a little bit. Meanwhile, the leaders have come into the lane. Johnston, McNamara, and Justin Wallace has followed them in as well. Taliancic, Baker, Pierce, Chastaneuf, all staying out. I think this might make Taliancic lose out a bit here, Scott.
I halfway agree with that, but at the same time, Tally's been watching that front group for a long, long time. You also notice how he never really bought into that same battle pack. There was only one time he really showed the nose. Tally loves a fuel-saving strategy. Absolutely loves to go out there and save as much fuel as he possibly can. If he gets home with the smell of an oily rag, he's done that so many times before. That's definitely the way that he was looking. Ewan Baker, he's fired up. This is a really, really new look Ewan Baker. He is just elbows out this year. Everything I've seen him drive, he's aggressive. Remember Canada, wanted to get those elbows out, did get the elbows out, and it actually cost him back at Canada.
And in the midst of all of this, Jamie Dyke, with that undercut, is now the effective leader of the race. Look at that. McNamara and Johnston trying to get past Rattray-White here. Zach Rattray-White has profited massively from this too, hasn't he?
Yeah, buys himself into the argument, and he's a really, really strong thinking driver. Really consistent, can drive multiple formulas, no issues. Ewan Baker's another driver, by the way, when I think of that. Quick in just about everything. Yeah, that's Ewan in a nutshell. This is going to be a big stop for Ewan. I think he'll have the opportunity here, and then there's stuff going on everywhere.
Yeah, so unfortunately, David Kirby, one of the cars involved in this, and it looks like Kirby turned Brody Sentence around at Miller Corner, and that has unfortunately put both of them on the back foot there. Miller Corner, a very popular spot for incidents historically, and it's no different this year. That is the incident, that's the turnaround there. And every chance that David Kirby will get a look from race control. In the meantime, Ewan Baker has completed his pit stop, and this is going to be tough here. Oh, look at that, Johnston past Rattray White on the way into turn 1, but Rattray White's going to try and hold on to it inside through Southern Loop. Baker now on fresh tyres. He can take advantage of this.
Yeah, but look at Sean McNamara disappearing down the road, right? So this is just about where everyone came out. Where did they all come out? Have a look at the pit stop time from McNamara as well. Just that fraction quicker. That's why he's ahead here. That's why he's in a really, really good spot. This is when, oh, that's a big lockup from Zach Rattray White at this point in time. Ewan Baker will get the elbows out. Watch him die. He'll straight to the inside here. Yep, there we go.
Yep. But it's blocked by Rattray White masterfully. Baker is going to have to try and use the rears out of Siberia. McNamara, meanwhile, working his way past Justin McLean for effective second place. And it looks like he did that one nice and cleanly, at least from the timing. Yep, there goes Talyancic. Byron Pierce is going to stay out for at least one more lap here. Our question is, where does Talyancic come out in the midst of what is now a very fired up pack?
Yeah, and just look at the margin already. Damian Johnson's now 0.8 of a second down the road because he got the job done early on in this lap. That's how much getting past. He blocked it, he covered it, did Rattray White, sorry, my apologies. And that's what it's cost Ewan Baker. It's nearly a second is the margin that he's looking at now. And there's Tally rejoining, so this doesn't work for Tally either.
No, it doesn't. Ends up rejoining in front of Michael Whiting, but now it's the turn of Tally to have tyres that are a lap fresher than everyone else's. At least Baker will have burnt through a bit of his tyres trying to get past Rattray White. The tyres on these cars, they can last for about 10 to 15 laps before they start dropping off in pace, but if you're driving aggressively, that number goes down.
And look at Tally, immediate. Look at Ewan Baker's going to get to the inside as well. Huge lock up from Tally. Tags. Oh, he's going to get out the other side. But had a look at the wheel work straight away from Talyancic. Even going through Stoner Corner right there, he had the thing already out. He was in the grass. You could see how aggressive he was behind the wheel, just from the wheel work as it was going on. And Rattray White's going to call that one for a look in. I don't think he's got... I think he's got a little bit of a case here, and I think Tally might have something to answer for.
Yeah, it was a fair tap. It didn't turn him around, but he was still muscled out of the way, which isn't quite in the spirit of what the regulations allow for racing in this series. So we will see. Meanwhile, Zach McDonald has been given a license point penalty for his contact with Ty Delaney earlier. Redress noted by race control, so it's not an on-track penalty, but I think he'll still have to clean up his act a little bit later. Blake Delaney coming in for his scheduled stop, so does Brady Baldwin. And with that, the only car left to pit is Byron Pierce.
Yeah, so I think Jamie Dyke might have a little bit of fuel here to save. Tends to, when he's in these sorts of positions, underfill the car a little bit and say, hey, I can save a little bit whilst I've got that track position. I think that was a smart heads-up strategy. He's certainly done some fuel saving throughout the race, but this is also just the way he goes. He knows how important that track position is at this point in the race. So that's why he's gone ahead and done this. If he saves a little bit, lets Sean McNamara go, gets P2, qualifies for split one. That's what he's thinking about in the back of his mind. Other way around is Tally. Think about where Tally's sitting right now. If he was to redress straight behind Zach Rattray White immediately and then immediately overtake him again, huge margin gain. Now, if he has to redress that penalty, 1.6 seconds in the rear as opposed to 0.3 he would have lost.
Yeah, when does McNamara go for the move here on Jamie Dyke, or will Jamie try and put a defence on and try and back McNamara into Johnston, who's still looking quite aggressive out there? Johnston's lap times, they're pretty even with everyone else. 128.8 on the last lap. It was a 128.59 for Sean McNamara. So he's looking the quickest out here at the moment, as we have seen over the course of the night so far. Coming up to 8 laps to go here in split 2 of V8 SCOPS. Here's the onboard from Talyancic as the thing is, Baker went for the move at the same time Tally was going for the inside, and looks like both of them made contact with Rattray White at the same time.
Yeah, so it might not be as simple as sitting down and saying, hey, this is definitely a redress here. You and Baker might have done that. But the problem for me is Tally's completely locked up. You're not seeing the brake lock-up smoke. He's fully locked up on the brakes. He was always going to make contact, even if you and Baker wasn't there. So I think you'll definitely have something to answer for. Change for the lead, exactly what I said. Jamie Dyke's not going to harass this one too much. I think he's in a pot to save some fuel.
Yeah, and if he can stick in the draft of Sean McNamara down the long, flat-out sections here at Phillip Island, then he will be able to hold on for it. But we have to keep an eye on the gap. But back to Damian Johnston, he is gaining. Look at that, 3/10 on the last lap, a tenth a lap otherwise. So you've got to be careful if you're Jamie Dyke. Look at how much space there is between Johnston and then Baker and Taliancic. If Dyke saves a little bit too much, he could be in danger of falling off the podium as Byron Pierce finally comes in for his stop.
Yeah, and have a look at Ewan Baker's just on the assault. He knows that he's got a shot here. He knows that he's got pace, and he knows that he's driving reasonably quickly. And again, I'm going to reference Canada because he is driving reasonably quickly at the moment from Ewan Baker. The thing that really noticed sort of over the last year or so, I've done some racing with him, done some racing in NASCAR, very elbows up kind of driver, very much. Sometimes that works because you get guys that will respect you a little bit more because you do get those elbows out. They love it. That's the way they want to go racing. Sometimes it ticks people off. And when you tick people off, they're not going to cut you any slack. I think that's the point that Ewan Baker will back into his corner. But at the same time, if you're not aggressive, you're not trying, well, what are you doing? You're not a race car driver anymore. So, I like the way Ewan Baker goes about his craft because he always apologises at the end of the day, says, yep, I'm being aggressive, but at the same time, I'm still going to wear the blame. That's a good race car driver.
Yeah, certainly is. Unfortunately, the strategy play has not worked out for Byron Pierce, and oh dear, look at that, Whiting versus Rattray White. Hayden Veld is going to try and get through here as well, but Zach on the inside of Siberia will defend the position. I was going to say regarding Byron Pierce, he's come out in 11th, so the decision to go long and try to preserve some pace through the mid-phase of the race has not worked out for him. He will be faster over these final 8 laps, but getting back into the top 10 is going to be quite difficult from his perspective. Oh no, that's Taliancic that's been turned around there at MG.
Yeah, it was Ewan Baker. Remember what I was talking about? Baker gets those elbows out. He got those elbows out. I haven't had a good look at that one, so I can't really comment on that one at this point in time. But now it's taken the edge off of Taliancic's tyres. It's really buying him back into this one. And Rattray White's going to have a go as well. They're all going to line up. This is getting spicy right here, Reese.
Oh, goodness me. Boxed in at the moment is Hayden Veld, and Whiting is slow. They're going to be 3 wide on the way into turn 1, and Whiting decides he doesn't want any part of that. Taliancic then trying to get past Veld on the way into turn 2. Bump, elbow, thigh, hip, who cares? It's contact, and Veld is just holding on by a thread here.
Yeah, and keep your eyes on that one as well because Veld was just opportunism, raw opportunism. But again, he's had that bump, he's had that grind. He wanted to get back in here. He knew he was quick, had a shot there. Man's having a go. I'm not upset with that. That's 3 wide. Michael Whiting heads up driving. I'm gonna be the meat in this sandwich. The gap and the space for me is gonna disappear. Bails out of that one nice and early. So.
All right, replay here of Michael Taliancic on Ewan Baker. Baker running wide through Lukey Heights, and Taliancic is trying to sneak through on the outside. That angle doesn't tell the full story. I think Baker was leaving a car's width of space, but Taliancic was just a little too far over to the right. So difficult to call that incident from our perspective. We'll leave that to race control. This might tell a little bit more. Yeah, you see that? Baker, I think, was still leaving enough space, but it was a matter of millimeters.
Tally had a wiggle on the brakes was what triggered that accident. He had a big old wiggle in the rear, so he's getting aggressive on that brake pedal at the moment. One of the things, when Tally's driving at his best, he's really, really relaxed. And the key that I've seen is every single time you sort of press a little bit of pressure onto him, he falls to pieces. He's not as good. And you can hear it when you talk to him after a race as well. When he's been really, really pressured, there's a different energy about Michael Taliancic. He's not one of those drivers I think stands up to pressure really well.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's facing off against this pressure nicely. Brady Baldwin and the number 7 up behind him. Sorry, that's not Tally. That's Andre Youssef, his teammate at Altus Australia, who's been right in the midst of all of this. Baldwin is facing off against Byron Pierce, who has the freshest tyres out of anybody. He only pitted 2.5 laps ago. And the inside line will be protected by Baldwin there. Pierce, unfortunately, running wide, and that is another position lost for him. Michael Stewart just sails on through.
Yeah, what a drive, though, from Brady Baldwin as well. And the other side of this coin is, look at where Andre Eustace brought himself back into this argument. Started out at 22nd, had some dramas. We've already talked about his damage, but he's in 10th at the moment. Is he going to finish 10th? No, not in your life. He's going to finish somewhere about 13th or 14th, but he's rescued a race. Again, switches that brain on. I've got to do something different to get out of this battle pack. Am I going to pay a price for it later on? Absolutely, but sometimes the race just falls your way. Brady Baldwin's gone down the different path, had this really troublesome opening stanza of the race, started out at 29th, now he's sitting outside the top 10, and he's going to try and get to the inside of the last corner. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, certainly is, but Andre Youssef holding strong, at least until they get to turn 1. He's going to hold the inside here. Can Brady Baldwin work his way into the top 10 in this race? Outside line isn't the worst place to be at turn 1. Brady Baldwin proves that he was able to hit the apex anyway.
Yeah, and particularly with a tyre offset like that. I don't think he's going to have the capability to go out here now and run down James Chastanoff, but that's a top 10 finish inside a split 2 for Brady Baldwin. We talked about it already. Another driver building his V8 supercar craft, putting himself in a really nice spot. How about this drive, though, from Jamie Dyke? Again, we said had to undercut the guys around him, could not afford to wait. Damian Johnson's still going to keep chalking time out of him. But if you have a look at that lap just before, that 2.56, a quarter of a second that's been pulled out of him there, I wonder whether or not Jamie Dyke was just saving a little bit of fuel, ran slightly offline somewhere, and it took him a while to gather that one back up. Other than that, matching pace with Damian reasonably well.
James Chastanoff, meanwhile, has just been issued a black flag from race control. That was for the contact with the number 13 of Justin Wallace back on lap 16. So Chastanoff, unfortunately, his run in the top 10 is going to come to an end in a couple of laps' time. Get a view of another incident that's gone on here. One of the 9.5 Mustangs, and oh dear, oh righty-o. That's one of the issues again with Miller Corner. You got cars trying to go across the racetrack. You got to get your trajectory right in the braking zone. Matt Scholes getting turned around there, unfortunately.
Yeah, difficult night. There's been so much argy-bargy here tonight. Normally when you come to Phillip Island, you go, oh, look, there's... I just remember Formula V races. It's people crisscrossing all the time looking for that drafting hole. We've certainly seen a lot of that, but what I've seen a lot of is people just messing that up. And I don't mean by a lot. I mean small amounts, realistically. The braking zone down there, and then have a look at this battle pack as well. This is just going to be crazy. Watch everyone see. There you go. There's the perfect example of it.
Yeah, indeed. Tim Mulford right in the midst of all of that. It was Andrew Ritchie, the lead car in that pack. Who's going to get it done here? Justin Wallace, a bit squirrely in the braking zone, does not offer an opportunity for Chris Coxhead to get back by.
Settle it down, boys. Breathe a little bit. Yeah, there's only a couple of laps left to go, but we've still got to finish that race to put some points on the board. My word. In terms of the mean sign, though, Ewan Baker at this point in time is up to 4th. I just don't... He hasn't got pace anymore. His pace is sort of worn off. He's losing a fraction of time to Michael Talianchis, but 3 seconds behind him, sort of, as we currently stand. Chastanoff has that penalty to serve still. Has he run out of time to serve this penalty? Maybe next lap. He has to serve it by next lap, for sure.
Yeah, he has to. Otherwise, it'll result in a much greater penalty. The fight is still on for Michael Taliancic to hold on to a position in the top 5. Zach Rattray-White has been looking very aggressive. I've been looking at them on my end, and Rattray-White has been very aggressive in the braking zone for this corner, specifically turn 4 at Miller. He was having a peek at Taliancic this time last lap. Does he do the same here? No, he's going to stay right on the racing line, draw a little bit closer, take advantage of the rubber, a lock-up from Hayden Veld behind. He briefly saw an opportunity to take advantage of this battle, but he's rapidly running out of time to make hay.
Yeah, through the hay shed's not a great place to make hay either.
No, unfortunately. Does seem like it would be from the name, but this is hay shed right here. It's a flat-out right-hand corner in these cars, and the trajectory sends you right towards the inside for Lukey Heights. So not much room to get a move done cleanly there unless you have a lot of trust in the drivers around you. On the bottom, we see Jamie Dyke still trying to keep Damian Johnston behind him. I think if Dyke lets Johnston go here, or if he loses the battle, it's not going to be the end of the world for him, because the top three have a massive margin over Ewan Baker right now.
Yeah, they do. And have a look at the differences in race management at the moment, Reese, and you know that tells you a lot about the driver, right? The drivers that are doing really, really well up the front here are your experienced campaigners. Sean McNamara, Jamie Dyke, Damian Johnson. These guys have all raced each other in these sorts of cars for an extended period of time. What does that teach you? It says immediately when the battling and the going gets tough, don't get flustered, get your race face on, get that brain thinking in the back of your mind. That's how they've pushed themselves. It's not been, yes, sure, they've had a little bit of pace. Yeah, sure, they've been reasonably quick and up at the front. But at the same time, these guys don't look as if any time in this car they've gotten flustered. That's the difference. Michael Taliancic has absolutely gotten flustered tonight. Things have not gone his way. You've seen the way that he's driven. I'm enjoying this from Zach Rattray-White. This is a different kind of drive. Normally he's really quiet and just goes about his business quietly. This has been an aggressive, I'm going to stand in your way, I'm going to block, I'm going to go with the aggressive undercut. And he's made that work for him. Different style of drive, enjoying that for him. Everyone else has lost their heads a little bit, and that's been the major difference.
Yeah, speaking of losing your head, Chris Coxhead having to make way for Justin Wallace here, who gets very squirrely on the exit of Siberia and will have no further chance to get by on this lap, I'd imagine, unless there's a mistake from Coxhead into Lukey Heights. This corner right here, one of the more difficult corners to get right on the track. You have to stick to the inside over the crest. The front goes light. You need to be careful. Andrew Ritchie, meanwhile, he's made a mistake at the front of that pack. He's slid off the circuit, and he will rejoin right at the rear of it. Falls down to 20th place as Matt Morris gets by him. The white flag is out, meanwhile. The final lap for our leaders. Can Jamie Dyke hold off Damian Johnston for second place on the road? Remember, all of our top three, they're in the clear. They'll be able to get into split one later on in the night. But if they come together here in the battle for second, Ewan Baker could be the dark horse.
Well, think about that. Both of these guys are probably not going to do that, right? They're both aware. Jamie sees him go down the inside. Yep, no worries. Have it. I'm not going to cause contact. Ewan Baker is in trouble. He is in a big, big fuel hole. Can we get some of these margins up over the last couple laps? In the last 3 laps, he's lost 0.8 of a second, 0.4 of a second, 0.9 of a second. Tally made a mistake on that middle lap. I think he's in a big fuel hole. I think he's struggling to get this thing home at this point in time. He's gone for the aggressive undercut in terms of fuel strategy, had to have a crack, had to get some track position, hasn't worked. Now he's got to dig himself out of a hole.
Yeah, indeed he does. He's only got a couple of corners left, though, so might be safe. But final few corners for our race leaders. Hayden Veld getting past Zach Rattray-White for 6th at MG. That looked like a very interesting maneuver there. He's going to redress it, but no such concerns for Sean McNamara, who will take the win in split 2 here at Phillip Island. Jamie Dyke in 2nd, Damian Johnston 3rd. Beautiful race from all of our top 3. Looks like Ewan Baker has been able to hold on, and it's a drag race between Hayden Veld and Zach Rattray-White for 6th, and Zach will win that one. The rest of the field coming across the line here, single file running throughout most of it. And I don't think there's any other battles from what I can see coming to the line aside from this one between Cracknell and Vlasblom. Zach Vlasblom winning that one and keeping 16th place. Craig Schultz trying to get the run here on Michael Angus. It's unsuccessful. Oh my God, drama right at the end there for Matt Scholes. That's so horrible to see.
Did he redress it? I think he might have redressed it in time too.
Yeah, really, maybe. Yeah, looks like it. Goodness me. We might have to get another look at that. It happened right at the end. 0.08
of a second. Delaney finished 0.08 of a second behind him, so we redressed it.
Yeah, okay. So, lucky escape there for Blake Delaney. But, I mean, you only have to take a look at Scholes' car to see that it was a very rough race for that driver who didn't even know if he was going to be racing in split 2 at the start of the night. So that's how it happened there. Delaney spinning him off there, but got straight on the brakes and allowed Scholes to cross the line just a few meters ahead of him.
Yeah, smart. I mean, no post-race penalty now to worry about, so that's the benefit of that one. Boy, that was elbows out. That's an interesting one. Remember, we're going to a sprint race night tonight too for split one, but here's the results, Reese.
Indeed. McNamara, Dyke and John Stone are your top three. They'll have the opportunity to race in split one in a few moments' time. Ewan Baker and Mike Taliancic will round out the top five there. Taliancic would have been hoping for better from that race. Zach Rattray White will hold off Hayden Vell for sixth. Whiting, Baldwin and Youssef round out the top 10. Great drive from Baldwin and Youssef, I have to say.
Yeah, Byron Pierce, I was really interested to see whether or not his strategy would pay out and he'd buy his way back in the top 10. Didn't work out that way from Cox said. Michael Stewart had a reasonable night at the office progressing through the field. Justin Wallace, Tim Mulford, Zachary Vlashbaum, Michael Cracknell, Ben Smith, Matt Morris. Gee, tough night at the office for the 966 and the 927 of Andrew Ritchie rounds out the top 20.
21st place, James Chastaneuf after a late penalty in the running. Michael Angus, Craig Schultz, David Kirby and Zach McDonald will round out your top 25. McDonald down 5 positions, Kirby down 10. They would have been hoping for better for sure. Same for Ty Delaney, down 10 places. Matthew Scholes with a very late heart attack moment versus Blake Delaney, gets 27th in the end. Brody Sentence, Justin McLean and Chris Miller are your last finishers on the lead lap. Troy Stone Street took a pit stop early on and had to take another one, I think, due to damage, and Rob Crisdale, unfortunately, not taking to the start in car 808. So that's going to conclude the racing portion of Split 2 here tonight. We'll be back very shortly for Split 1 action here. 3 races on the trot for the celebration of the 200th race in V8 SCOPS history. Stay with us here on SimSpeed TV. You're watching SimSpeed TV, V8 SCOPS for 2024, the second round of this championship, marking the 200th race in V8 SCOPS history. We've got 200, 201, and 202 taking place tonight, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. I'm Reese Gardner, Scott Rankin with me in the comms box. And Scott, what a milestone we are celebrating here. We've got a few things to go through regarding the history of this championship. We celebrated the technical 10th anniversary of V8 SCOPS last year. We started with a test season in 2014 and then the first proper season taking place in 2015. There's been so many different race winners in this series, and none have been better than Jared Phillip, who has 63 wins on the trot here. Three-time champion, same for Madison Down as well. And just look at that list. That really is a who's who of AusNZ sim racing.
Yeah, boy, isn't it? I mean, you know, you flick back and you look through that and you just go, all of these names I recognize, you know, all of them have achieved something at a high level, high stakes sort of side of things, if you will. And then, you know, you've still got in the middle of that, you know, you guys down at the back with those one wins that just got lucky at some point in time. And all the drama happened around them and they emerged, popped out the other side and picked up a race victory. Those are really, really important to celebrate as well, because every one of those guys who've got 1 or 2 wins, for me, those guys remember those moments a little bit more. They mean something a little bit extra. When you got 63, when you got 33 wins, each of those individual wins don't mean quite as much. But I can tell you, Jackson, Susan Harlow, Mitchell Siulak, Ian Ford, Matt Hill, Kane Kugamiya, Rick Kuznetsov, John Latham, Luke Rosella, Jordan Ross, Brock Salmon, Tyson Williams. All of those guys have got 1 win. That will be right up there. It's in the memory bank. They recall so much about that race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's plenty of real life drivers here who've competed in V8 SCOPS over the years. Scott McLaughlin, one of them, Shane Van Gisbergen and Brody Kostecki with wins on the board here in V8 SCOPS. And I think Brody will be ribbing Shane that he has 3 more wins than him in this online racing league. Of course, both of them prolific real life racing careers now. And we're seeing quite a few drivers who are using V8 SCOPS as a springboard to even bigger and better things, like Josh Rogers. He raced for Team TTL early on in the championship's history, then he got picked up by Coanda Simsport and ended up moving to Europe to sim race professionally.
But that's it. You know, you got to start somewhere. You got to get your feet wet somewhere. In fact, nearly sim racing's version of literally these days. But you know, it's if you don't start from the ground up, you don't build that solid foundation. And the thing for Josh is, you know, he's up there with 15 wins. It's not 5, it's not 3, it's 15 wins. That says he came out, he competed regularly, and he was good enough regularly to be right up there. And that's the reason that he was springboarded. It says to people that are in and around now, attach yourself to those good names. Make sure you ooze, you squeeze them like a sponge. You get all of that goodness that comes out. What can you learn? What can you learn about those guys as people at the same time? It's just, yeah, if you're not on this list, you've got to make your way onto this list, and then you've got to, you know, springboard off to international fame.
Yeah, indeed you do. The champions over the course of this series have really been a who's who as well. Richard Hamstead winning the inaugural season, Madison Down taking the second 2 on the trot, and then we had the Jared Phillip era from 2017 to 2019. Down took his other 2 titles. 4-time champion is Madison Down. And then we've gotten a bit more variance in recent years. Used to be the Madison and Jared show, Brady Myers taking the 2022 title for Trans-Tasman Racing, and then Griffin Gardner, part of 9-5 Sim Sports, the champion in 2023 after early leading from the likes of Andrew Gilliam and Rehan Leonage. Gardner just kept finishing consistently, taking a few race wins on the trot himself, and managed to take the title in the final couple of rounds. A V8 SCOPS championship is certainly a great medal to wear.
It's an elite medal to wear. I'm never gonna. My name's never gonna appear on this list, Reese. Your name's never gonna appear on this list. Such as it requires accuracy, consistency. You can win one of these titles with a couple of race wins, but you need to be so good across the season. You've got to challenge yourself to become better. Next year, when we add our 2024 recipient to that list, perhaps, this year they're going to be potentially the last of this series of cars, the last of the Australian made cars. Next year it's going to potentially be a new category, and who will be that winner? And how about all of the different series, all of the tracks that have ever been used as well for their first time on this series? There's some key ones, there's some regular ones that we've gone back to because they've just got so much history and they just create so much drama.
Yeah, and of course, no surprise to see that some of the top used tracks in V8SCOPS history have been Australian ones. Phillip Island actually coming into this round as the equal 5th most used track in V8SCOPS history, with 10 races over 4 different formats. After tonight, it will be the equal 2nd most used track with 13 races over the championship's history. Of course, a variety of formats being used in V8SCOPS. Phillip Island has hosted enduros in the past, single 500k race. We've also had standard 250k rounds held here, as well as 2 race sprint rounds. And now, with 3 race sprint rounds being brought into the fold, I think those stats will be jacked up a little bit further. But looking at this history of the tracks, it's also a history of iRacing, I'd say. You can pinpoint the years of the championships with the years that some of the newer tracks were released. Silverstone, of course, has been a part of iRacing for quite some time, but it was only used for the first time in V8SCOPS in 2019. Snetterton came out in 2018. It was used for the series then. Oschersleben and Jerez being added to the calendar in 2023, and Jerez is back on the calendar for this year. Certainly looking forward to that one as well. But there's been stalwarts such as Watkins Glen, Road Atlanta, Oran Park, Phillip Island, Mount Panorama, Road America as well. Traditionally been used as the final round for this championship, but no longer this year.
Yeah, sometimes is good to go with traditions, sometimes it's good to break them. Road America is one of those tracks, it's decided champions over a number of years, and we've seen that as a part of our championship here in V8 Supercars within Australia as well. We've had Newcastle jump in there, we've had Adelaide jump in there at different points throughout the journey as well. I was looking at Detroit Grand Prix Belle Isle because this is before my time on iRacing, and I was looking at it going, man, that's a long way down the list, a long time before it was added. Remember, it was only added to the service in 2018. I had to go and look that one up because I was like, no, that can't be true. But I can't recall a Detroit Belle Isle race that hasn't added its own thematical influence. It's, for me, you might call Gilles Villeneuve the street circuit of iRacing, but it's Detroit Belle Isle. Detroit Belle Isle is just that street circuity look. It's the closest we've got to anything in Australia, and it makes itself felt. I don't know that there is ever a time that a race has occurred at Detroit Belle Isle that it hasn't just been a drama-centered fest that just oozes rewatchability.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, street circuits are a big part of the real-life Australian Touring Car Championship, and, having Belle Isle added to iRacing, it was perhaps one of the biggest additions for V8 racing in the history of these cars' time on iRacing themselves. Well, we have so much history in the books, and I think a lot more yet to be made as we move on through to Split 1. We're in practice at the moment, drivers setting times, getting their eye in. It was a 20-degree track in Split 2. Now it's a little bit hotter, 29 degrees Celsius track temperature. The air temperature has actually dropped, which is interesting considering the sun is out a bit further. Currently a bit past midday in sim time. And look at those wind gusts, 37 k's an hour to the north. That's going to result in a massive headwind down the front straight.
Yeah, that's not going to necessarily be easy. And think of it being a headwind into turn 1. It's then, it's going to be the same as they come through the crest of the Southern Loop. But think about how the car's going to be wiggling all over the road as they go through Southern Loop, because it's going to get, effectively as it turns through that 180 degrees, it's going to get the wind from 3 different directions placed around the car. They're going to be swinging through that corner, and the car is going to wander all over the road. That is unique. That is going to create some really, really interesting racing. The other spot is right here in terms of things as well. As they come down here, it's blowing on the side panels of these cars. It's going to be difficult to pull the car up. It's going to wander around in the braking zone again as it's a crosswind straight through MG later on in the lap. That's going to make unique things. The last corner is going to be a little bit tricky getting on the power at the right time. I'm thinking this is one of those nights where the drivers might just want to triple check the weather settings, make sure that they understand where that weather's coming from, and make sure they understand that there is having some effect on the car, because that handling characteristic is just going to be that's going to be wild.
Yeah, certainly is. Let's look at the championship standings coming into this round. Well, James Scott taking the win round 1 at Montreal. Griffin Gardner and Madison Down completing the podium in the single 200k race at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Dylan Rudd and Tom Freer rounding out the top 5. Still looks like a pretty competitive field. Largely the Synergy and Trans-Tasman, as well as Evolution in the top of the team standings. But Lobs Esports has certainly come to the fore. Relatively new team started up by Shane Van Gisbergen and Jared Filsell. They brought in James Scott for that one as well. As the name of the other driver escapes me. I'll get it eventually. Dylan Rudd, that's it. Dylan Rudd, formerly of 9.5 Sim Sports. Thank you very much for that tap on the shoulder there, Jay. I'm still coming down from a sugar high right now, so my my brain's not quite up to scratch yet, Scott.
Luke Rosella also joined that team as well. So, there's a number of drivers in and around that mob working together. I'm really interested to see Luke Rosella's progress. He's got an opportunity here to really improve himself. If he's looking at the data, if he's looking all around, if he's trying to make the most of this opportunity, for as long as that lasts. Dylan Rudd, again, like you said, big opportunity to surround himself with some unique individuals and potentially press on there. The Synergy Sim Racing team, it's a lot of those drivers come from that side of things as well. So what does their roster look like? Does it feel a little bit weak? And you sit down, you look at things and go, you know what? I think they might have added to their drivers. They've replaced them reasonably well. They've pushed themselves further along. So I think we're in for this exciting debate and really flipping and flopping of what the driver market looks like and where everyone's situated and where everyone feels that they are. Because I think there's a few teams that be sitting here going, I think we should be getting more results, and there'll be other teams going, we're overperforming where we're at. We're doing a great job. Keep it going, boys.
Well, how much overperformance will be allowed in the 3 races tonight? 14 laps each or 30 minutes, whichever comes first. Of course, manual safety cars active in this series with the Proven Energy Porsche Mission R and standby in the pits. Reverse top 10 for race 2. That is huge, that. So if you're fighting for 10th in race 1, you're looking at pole position for race 2.
Yeah, important to note, reverse grid, it really just shakes everything up. It represents an opportunity for somebody who's, a little bit further down, give themselves a really good opportunity. But at the same time, it could create one of the biggest fights in the last couple of laps of that first race as well. So think about things at the tail end. If we've got 5 cars that are all squabbling over that 10th spot, that's the difference, isn't it? So, it's going to be huge in terms of how that fight goes down. I'm really, really interested. There was a couple of slides we didn't touch over in terms of the history of this event. Chiefly amongst those was I wanted to see the number of drivers who've got the most starts in here. We already know it's Stenny. Stenny's got it. And the number's 169. Celebrate for that. Say, give me some nices back in the chat. But I really want to take a look at the history of who's done the most V8SCOPS starts, because there's some interesting data in here.
Yeah, certainly is. We don't have a graphic for that, but we can tell you that Kurt Stenberg, race 1 is going to mark his 170th V8SCOPS race start, and I did the percentage calculation. Kurt Stenberg has competed in 85% of all V8SCOPS events over the course of this championship's history. You can call Stenberg many things, but not uncommitted.
Isn't 85% the amount of ethanol that's in the fuel mix in these cars?
Actually, yeah, good point. Very good point indeed. 85% ethanol. So maybe Stenny's going to try and keep that number up. Might end up missing a couple of races this year just to keep that number there. G'day, Stenny. Love you, mate. It'll be interesting to see how well he does here, considering practice at the moment not quite going his way. 129.1 versus a 128.0 at the top of the practice standings for his teammate at Trans-Tasman Racing, Brady Myers. There's Stenny in the red car making his way around Southern Loop. Car 47 has been been one of the stalwart entries in V8SCOPS history. If you're interested in who else has had the most starts, well, Madison Down at 160 race starts, 9 less than Stenberg. Brenton Hobson rounding out the top 3 of race starts with 156. You have to go down 20 more race starts to find Jake Maloney and Jared Philsell. And interesting to note that the inaugural champion, Richard Hampstead, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th on the list of all-time race starts in V8SCOPS.
Yeah, look at that again. It's the who's who of those numbers as well. Hampstead's right up there. Forza El Nabi, even at the back end of things. You know, he may not have had the longest career in terms of V8SCOPS, but he's only just shy of the halfway mark in terms of things. If he does about another 10 races or so, he'll be right on the 50% mark in terms of races completed. So he's right there and thereabouts, which is good to see in terms of things at the moment. This is going to be an interesting session. Like you said, Brady Myers is being quick as well, and he's right up and at that pointy end. And for me, Brady Myers is really kind of being this. I like to refer to him as the greatest bridesmaid that's ever been in sim racing, because boy does he play wingman to Madison Down extremely well. He's quick, he's deserving, and I reckon he should have won more races. I reckon he should have finished, a little bit, but he's just played second fiddle a lot. I wonder how that dynamic plays on him and how that plays through his psychology.
Maybe. I mean, Brady Myers does have a championship to his name in 2022, so he's certainly capable of doing it. But yeah, Madison Down is one of the titans of AusNZ sim racing, and I mean, you only have to look at V8SCOPS and Logitech G Pro Invitational to see the kind of record that Madison Down has maintained and still maintains to this day. Down's participation in V8SCOPS has been patchier in recent years compared to his previous commitment, but he's back in it this year, and we'll see how well of a run he has. Let's see James Scott here with the white windscreen banner. That denotes the leader of the championship coming into this round. So keep an eye out for that. Everyone else has a black windscreen banner with their last name at the top. So Scott should be easy to spot in the middle of the pack.
No, you can't see me. I'm in the commentary box. There's nowhere. Oh, James Scott. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, your name is not Rankin Scott. It's Scott Rankin. So
get that one out of the way nice and early. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. James Scott, again, I really like this dynamic that team is going through at the moment. A lot of changes. They're off and they're out and they're standing on their own 2 feet. And what does that change in the way that things are done? That was a little bit unfortunate for Jamie Stovall. Got a little bit wide and drifted back onto the track. Anyway, it's practice. We're allowed to do that at the moment. There's no intent there. But in terms of things, one of the great discussions I had with Michael Taliancic was actually around managing that team prior to moving across to being under Altus Esports management. And he said the weight that was lifted. So who takes on that weight over there? What does that do to their mentality? What does that do to the work behind the scenes? If you talk to Sean McNamara, he has to delegate. You have to delegate in those sorts of circumstances, because running a team, keeping the sponsors happy, keeping everyone linked up, it takes a toll on someone. Who is that someone, and what does it look like 6 months from now? Maybe even 3 months from now. I think 6 is probably a little bit too far down the line. Do we see some changes in driver behavior as a result of that? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been in the team manager seat myself for a period, and I have to tell you, I'm very happy that I'm not in a management role anymore. It takes a certain kind of person to be able to wrest control of a sim racing team and still be able to perform yourself out on track. It is quite a big mental load, and I think a lot of people underestimate that. I mean, the concept of teams in sim racing can often be a bit vague. Often it just comes down to 2 drivers who are mates with each other and say, oh, let's drive the same colored car in events. But then you get to teams like Lobs Esports, like Altus, like TTR, like 9.5, pretty much most, if not all, of the teams in this series who have actual sponsors on the cars. All of these logos, they aren't just here to make the cars look pretty. They actually do provide benefits, financial and otherwise, to the drivers and to the people who operate these teams. teams, because sim racing, you do have to spend a bit of money to make a bit of money, just like in real life motorsport. I think that's one of the big changes that has come in for sim racing over the last 10 years, maybe a little bit more, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, look at the cost of hardware that's gone up as a result. There was a while there where you couldn't get Club Sport V3 pedals from Fanatec. They just didn't exist. They were like hen's teeth in terms of things in the racing world, and just the hardware it disappeared. It all dried up because we were all sitting at home. We're all on things. We saw that the quality of the hardware that was coming out for a little bit dip as we did a lot of the production of a lot of things right around the world. But sim racing certainly quite strongly felt that at different points in time. The prices went up because supply meets demand in those sorts of things. Software costs, look at the amount of software that's now come out as a result of the pandemic as well. Everyone was trapped at home, a little bit more time to work on their own pet projects, and there are now businesses that support themselves. Have a look at Sud Speed since the end of the pandemic. The world itself, the sim racing world has been forever changed, but forever changed for the better compared to a lot of other industries that may have lost out. It's been a trying time, but it's so good to be sitting on this side of it and looking at the ability to enjoy our racing in the way that we do these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well put there, Scott. And right on time, too, because we got 30 seconds left in the practice session looking at Andrew Gilliam, who again, as I said, early contender for the championship in 2023, ultimately lost out thanks to a couple of unfortunate races around enduro time. And that's something that I'm looking forward to, is enduro season, because that's often where championships are made and broken. Gilly having another go at it here for Altus Esports, formerly of Pursuit Sim Racing, after Pursuit was absorbed into the Altus fold. Altus Australia sprung up from that, and Gilliam with the main Altus squad. Let's see how well he does in qualifying. It's a 35-minute session all up. It's going to be split into two groups. Each group get 15 minutes each to set their times for the race 1 grid. First one is going to be positions 16 to 32 in pre-qualifying, plus the split 2 podium if they have decided to enter the server for split 1. Leading the charge out of the pits is Cameron Jones for 9.5 Sim Sports. The 019 already jetting away from the rest of the pack here as we begin the long tour around the outlap. All these drivers coming out at the same time. They want to get their laps in as soon as possible because there's every chance that the track could heat up, and that will affect lap times.
Yeah, just thinking about it in the background of things as well, changeable conditions at this point in time. We're in the crux of the day. We're right in the heat. The sun's about as overhead as it's going to get. It's 12:30 p.m. in terms of sim racing time. So track's not going to, it shouldn't move around too much in terms of where the temperature's at the moment. It's a lovely cooler day down in the southern parts of our country, known for that icy breeze that feels as if you're off into the Russian wastes in and around Siberia. In terms of things at this point in time, stat to sort of think about and mull over as you witness and watch and enjoy everything that's going on. The largest gap in the field during pre-qualifying was between P1 and P2. Andrew Gilliam, the only driver to set a 1 minute 28. What are we going to see from this session? We saw a few 28s in the last session. Track's 10 degrees warmer now. Things change.
Indeed they do. It's going to be more difficult to get the pace out of the cars here. And as I mentioned in Split 2, Phillip Island known for being tough on tyres with so many fast, high-load corners. Well, here comes Cameron Jones to the line to begin his hot lap. Let's take a tour around the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. If you're Australian and you're into your racing, you know this place like the back of your hand already, let's be honest, but we'll go through it anyway. Past pit exit, got to be careful in the race. Drivers spit right onto the racing line there, hard into turn 1 in 5th gear. Just climb over the curb, shorten your way through the corner, get the car straightened up, trail the brakes into Southern Loop. You want to try and keep the weight on the front. See, there's the crest. Got to get it to the inside for the dip, and hard out on the exit in 3rd. Then there's the run through Stoner Corner. This is a flat out left on the way into the heaviest braking zone on the track. This is Miller. Got to be careful to get on the brakes at exactly the right time. time. First gear for Cameron Jones, first gear for pretty much everybody, just to slow the car down a little more using engine braking on the rear axle. Second gear into Siberia, there's a bit of a dip and camber to the inside of the corner too. You can carry a bit more speed through that corner than you realize. Then this is Hayshed, another flat out right-hander. It's only just flat out in these cars. At the top of the rev range in fifth, and then down into third again for Lukey Heights. You have to keep to the inside, clamber over the curb if you need to, but it's best to avoid it to get a straighter run into MG, the slowest corner on the track. Stick to the inside, hard on the power, try and hold full throttle as best you can, short shift into third, and then control the oversteer on the way into the final corner here. Fourth gear, high revs here for Sean McNamara. Just get up into fifth at the exit of the corner, and that is the run to the line. Let's see what Cameron Jones can do here. McNamara as well. Oh, they're both in the 128s. That's very competitive.
Yeah, exceptionally competitive. Nothing in between them. 128s, and not just the 128s. It was also a 128-4 from both of them. 4.58 plays a 4.23. Ken Ladder's going to go next in terms of things. 28.8 as he tries to settle things down in. And the other thing I'm just keeping half an eye on at this point in time, bunch of drivers run wide at the final corner. There was some squabbling for track position between a number of drivers there as they come through MG. The winds are swirling around at this point in time. At the start of this lap, when everyone was going around, round about the low 30s in terms of kilometers an hour in terms of speed, static from a northerly direction. Now it's up over 40 kilometers an hour. That wind is just blustering. It's not something you're going to be able to time race at this point in time. It's really, you just got to get lucky. You just got to get lucky with when it hits you, how hard it hits you. Already just the winds that I'm tracking, it's already jumped around 4 or 5 Ks an hour just as I'm watching it at the moment. Winds are going to be a big part of these qualifying laps.
They absolutely are. And how's the gap for P1 between Adam Briggs and Blake Warboys? Nothing between them. They set the same time down to 1,000th of a second. That's crazy stuff, but it's not out of the ordinary for V8SCOPS. This series is known for being one of the most tight and competitive fields in Australian sim racing for good reason.
I saw it on a little bit earlier on in the day, and I don't know if it'll be repeated here tonight, but I saw 3 rows on the grid where the time was identical from the guy that was on the inside to the guy that was on the outside. A NASCAR truck race that was racing earlier today. I wonder whether or not these guys can pull it off. I've seen sessions where there's 3 guys at the same time. I don't know how many you reckon you can get that same time. Do you reckon that time sticks? I think it's going to get pipped. I don't know if it'll stick. I reckon one of them will go faster.
Yeah. I reckon there's going to be at least one time that goes a little bit faster. Interesting to note that in pre-qualifying, the times were even closer than that. Of course, iRacing only shows times down to the 1,000th of a second, but it does record times down to the 10,000th of a second, and we had people tied for that. Like a 10,000th of a second. How much of a car is that? Is that like the first few centimeters of the front bumper?
It'd be a few mil. You wouldn't get to a centimeter, I don't think. So in terms of things as well, think about how the cars put their weight down, how they put their power to the ground. Guarantee when you look at those sector times and you break it up, somebody's got a fraction more wing on than the other guy. So one of them is going to make a lot more time in sector 1. One of them is going to make more time back in a deeper sector as well. So there's a lot of that sort of wiggling room and around. And the other thing is it was from 2 different teams as well. So that tells you 2 different architectures, 2 different styles and stuff. There's no way those 2 guys would be on the same setup. They'd be on something close, but one of them would have gone one way for a specific reason. One of them would have gone another way for a specific reason.
Yeah. Wow. So smallest gap in the field in pre-qualifying, just being noted, it was between Luke Rosella and Luke Mitchinson for 15th place in pre-qualifying. So we don't usually read the full time out in broadcasting. I know I do it a lot, but it's often not the best form. I'm going to read them now. Luke Rosella for Lobs Esports, 1:27.3437. Luke Mitchinson for Synergy Sim Racing, 1:27.3438. How's that?
And it was duplicated deeper in the field for 2 cars that actually didn't make it in the session as well for 75th spot. So not only was that feat hit once, it was matched.
That's amazing. Amazing stuff. I love the early phase of the V8SCOPS season because, you have drivers coming back who may have given up on their campaigns halfway through the previous year. You have drivers in new teams looking to prove themselves, etc. And there's always this real fire of competitiveness throughout the whole field. Keep an eye on Kenneth Latter for the time being, as the rest of the main group have just crossed the line to start their next hot laps. Looks like it's Jacob O'Reilly who's leading the way in the pack behind Kenneth Latter here. They're just coming into turn 2 now, but Latter is in Siberia, and that's a little bit wide there on the exit there for Kenny. The V8 Veterans competitor having a bit of an issue around that half of the lap, and it looks like Jacob O'Reilly has run off the track as well. So that's going to be 2 more hot laps that don't come to fruition.
Yeah, and they're going to be out of the chain now as well. This is really tricky for Ken Latter, because if he pits here, slaps some fresh rubber on, he's going to come out right at the head of this chain. But the problem is these guys are all going to be on their cooldown laps when he catches up to them as well. He's going to be really slow trying to preserve his tyres, and these guys are going to be thundering down trying to get back to the pits. Time for a Stenny check-in. He's run off the road is the thing. And there's another car off the road at Siberia as well. So two more cars that sidestep the queue and run off the road in terms of where they're running at this point in time. Blake Warboys was quick. I really like this lap from Warboys. I would say he's probably feeling a little bit more confident than normal, which is a good sign to see from him. He's got pace. I've seen him have a real splash in the pan kind of speed, but it comes and it goes. He's either really, really quick and he's really competitive, or he's nowhere at all. And I want to see that sort of turn a corner for Warboys. I think is a big change. How about Adam Briggs? Let's see if this lap is going to be better.
Oh, he did catch the start of the curb, the grass on the way out there, but times flow in. Bo Albert up to 8th, Mitchinson and Freer up into 4th and 5th. Sean McNamara gets into 3rd place. Jamie Machado briefly in 12th place, but Scott Gamble and Paul Young going 4th and 8th fastest respectively. Jamie Dyke, one of our split 2 competitors, gets to 17th as things stand. 1:28.69 for him, so keep an eye on that time. We'll see how far up in the field our split 2 podium ends up getting, but the lap is over for all these drivers on screen right now. They'll be making their way back to the pits for one more run at it, and they only have 5 minutes remaining to do it. The Group 1 session ends at 20 minutes to go in the session. Then there's a 5-minute break, and Group 2 goes out. So they have to get to the pits pretty quickly. Usually when we see a cool-down lap back to the pits, they're running a little bit slower than this, but these guys know they don't have much time.
Yeah, so you say cooldown laps happen a little bit slower. Well, not really. Not in a V8 supercar. You're always just on them. Any advantage I can get. Can I overtake someone on the cooldown lap? Can I get a little bit better track position? Does that put me more near a teammate? It's an opportunity to look around you. But tonight, the times are just so close, so marginal, that it's a race back to the pit lane. It's this is actually still a competitive portion of the qualifying, but just for a different reason.
Well, they all make their way into the pits, and they should all be able to get out in time for one more attempt at a hot lap. Drivers that are out on track at the moment, well, not many. Kenneth Latter has re-emerged back onto the racetrack. He's off sync to everyone else. He abandoned his hot lap we were looking at before and went back into the pits where his engine unfortunately blew. So let's see what Kenneth Latter can do here to improve on his time. 1:28.8. He's got 6/10 to make up if he wants to get provisional pole. Let's see if he can do it.
So it's coming in, actually. We've actually got a little bit closer time in terms of things. Oh, Latter's run wide at turn 1. That's it. He's done. He's not going to have enough time.
Oh, it's a shame there for Ken Latter. He's gone down and had an attempt, but that will put his qualifying session to an end as the rest of the field makes their way back out onto the circuit for one more attempt. 3 minutes on the clock for the Group 1 qualifying session. What we were going to say there, Scott, was the gap between Briggs and Warboys actually went down to the 10,000th of a second there once again.
You're having a laugh, aren't you? You're having a laugh. Surely it's not. It's what it is. Oh my word.
Yeah, 1:28.2075 for Briggs, 1:28.2076 for Warboys. I mean, how many superlatives can I come up with to describe how small that gap is? I think I've run out of words, really.
The dictionary is long, but it's also a very wordy read, if you will, Reese. But there's plenty of those superlatives out there. You'd need nearly the entire dictionary, though, of the superlatives to get through and certainly convey that. The fact that it's happened 3 times with a mixture of prequel and this series is mental. There is no way to sit down. It's just unreal. So anyway, in the meantime, this is where the money is made and lost, and it's gonna be settling in and seeing who can. I tell you what, they've actually just gone back and had a look at the timing deeper. Did you know there's 8 decimal places in terms of timing that we can pull out?
Yeah, there is. Of course. Yeah, iRacing only shows 3 decimal places in sim, but the timing actually runs a little more accurate than that. That really is amazing. I mean, people are really pushing on the exit of the final corner, aren't they? They want the best runs possible for their final hot laps here. Follow Kurt Stenberg for a little bit. This bright red TTR machine. He's gotten into the top 10 provisionally so far. Stenberg has usually been, a pretty average qualifier, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. He often runs around the midfield in terms of outright pace, but occasionally on his day, he can be knocking on the door of a top 10, maybe even a top 5. One thing you can count on with Kurt Stenberg is he doesn't give up. He has been out there with cars that have been horribly damaged in the past, getting involved in incidents, being crashed into for the most part for Stenny, but he's always there at the end of the race, and it's that kind of commitment that breeds results, and Stenberg has been well in the top 10, potentially even the top 5 in the championship standings at the end of a V8SCOPS season. It is still only round 2, so needs to set the standard now. Through MG they come, and the next roster of lap times will be coming up very shortly. Jamie Machado and Paul Young are going to be leading the way, the teammates at Phase 4 Motorsport. They're a little bit ahead of Kurt Stenberg here and about to come across the line. So, does anyone improve here on their final runs in Group 1? Across the line they will come. Jamie Stovall all the way up to 3rd. Stenny improves to 5th. Luke Mitchinson up to P2.
Oh.
Cameron Jones there as well, up to the top. First driver in the 1:27 for the qualifying session. And look at that, tying to the 1,000th again, this time between Briggs and Mitchinson.
Yeah, but Briggs improved this time, so that's not a match with Blake Warboys. It's a match. Briggs improved, and Mitchinson matched him again. It's just mental in terms of the improvement. The amount of drivers, the bulk of this field is in the 28.3s in terms of the range. This so far, but Cameron Jones, that lap was mega. First of the drivers in 27.9. And I reckon the track's cooled 1 degree Celsius. That's the difference. That's how much more speed he found. We found, what, 2.5 tenths? With 1 degree worth of change. That says he probably wasn't a little bit accurate. I reckon, what, 1.5 per degree of track temperature that you normally see improvement. But everyone had that opportunity. They had to nail that last lap. This next group are going to start with that cooler track. So odds on says that they should be quicker, but the times have really come to the fore at that front end, and the track's already heated back up again. There was a small window. They got their laps in.
Yeah, very small window indeed. And of course, the track temperature is affected by cars running over it as well. The more cars that pound over the racing line, the more heat gets worked into that line around the circuit. So these are the results from Group 1. Jones, Briggs, Mitchinson, O'Reilly and Warboys, your top 5. Provisionally, we still have half the field yet to come out and set their times. Gamble with a good performance up into 6th. Stovold with that late improvement up to 7th. McNamara, Stenberg and Brian Borg rounding out the top 10.
Moving over to 11th on back is Tao Serono from Altus Esports Australia. Tom Freer, Brenton Hobson, Paul Young, Jamie Dyke deep in the pack, but he still made the top split, and that's the key. Bo Albert is 16th. Jamie Machado 17th. Damian Johnson again has also made the main game, has managed to pip a few drivers. Thomas Freeman and Kenneth Latter. Boy, Ken Latter has just not had a great run of things.
No, certainly not. I mean, it's hard to get Phillip Island right at the best of times, and I think the timing just wasn't great for Kenneth Latta. You know, he was off sync with everyone else, had the track to himself, but probably would have missed out on some slipstream there. Meanwhile, the Proven Energy safety car's out on the circuit for a recon lap, and I mean, we pointed this out in round one, but nice to see a change in the safety car being used for V8SCOPS. These guys obviously running the qualifying energy output on these things. They look very quick on their way around the track.
Yeah, they're even taking to some of the grass as well. That's being a little bit green, boys, in terms of things. But they're putting the hammer down. Did you say safety car? Because this looks like nearly a race between the two of these guys.
Yeah, it's a bit unsafety car right now. But Dan Stevens making his way around with Simon Mazzomo is actually going to pull a move on him coming down into MG. Oh, God, I love that. That's fantastic. Well, a single lap for the Proven Energy Porsche Mission R's, and they'll tour back into the pit lane. And, well, we won't be seeing them again likely until the racing portion of the night. The green flag has flown for Group 2, and the driver's already out. Robert Gibbs in car number 2 for Evolution Racing Team leading the way. Got Sebastian Flock, his teammate, up behind him with Madison Down and Jake Maloney for Trans-Tasman Racing, 3rd and 4th in line. So, TTR versus Evolution Racing Team, one of the longest standing rivalries in Australian sim racing. And it continues here.
Yeah, but look at Robert Gibbs in terms of confidence levels at the moment. He's coming off a real high, won his first ever race of Logitech on Wednesday night. Was there some drama? Was there some chaos that made that happen? But yes, at the same time, he still had to be right there in contention and keep his nose clean. He ticked all of those boxes. So this is another opportunity. How about the stat? Let's talk about this in terms of what does 1/10,000th of a second mean, Reese? Well, it's the difference between places on the grid as it currently stands for a couple of these drivers out here. But at 250 kilometers an hour, 1/10,000th of a second is 7 millimeters. You don't even get a full centimeter. That's at 250 kilometers an hour, about the speed as we cross the start finish line. However, 1/1000th of a second is 7 centimeters at that approximate period in time. Do you know how long it takes for a bee's wing to flap? Well, it's 200 times a second. It's 5/1000th of a second. So in that time, a V8 supercar can move, let's say 35 centimeters. That just puts things into a little bit of contrast for you guys sitting along and watching at home.
Certainly does. That really is amazing. And when we say stuff like the blink of an eye, it can have a literal application here because the human eye takes about 1/10 of a second to blink. Well, on board with Robbie Gibbs here at the front of the train. No slipstream for him, but he'll try to get the best banker lap on that he possibly can here. As you said, winning Logitech Pro Invitational on Wednesday night. So Gibbs is on the up and ups, especially since joining Evolution Racing Team. Looking for big things here from the number 2.
Yeah, big opportunity. Yeah, is he punching the hole in the air for everyone in behind him? Yes, but look, the drivers have a different debate about this. If you've got a setup that's really slick through the corners, you're trimmed out, you're running not a lot of wing, maybe having that dirty air effect is not something you necessarily want. Yes, you definitely want that hole through the air. I actually don't like doing my qualifying laps around other people. I'm one of those guys that I just want to be in my zone. I want to be running my laps and setting my times. I find this sort of a qualifying really, really detrimental. You've got to surround yourself by the right people. You can't just go, this guy's within a 1/10 of a second in terms of where I am. Sometimes you just don't like his line. Sometimes there's different ways around the racetrack, and that means you've got to move around, find a little bit more clear air, and that can work in your favor. Look at how close Down is getting to the rear end of Sebastian Flock. That's more dirty air. The closer you get, hampers your lap time, but you make that pay off in terms of the toe.
That you do. Well, the end of the lap is here for Robbie Gibbs, and that might be an off track. Who knows? Many drivers running wide at the final run here, but Gibbs' lap counted, and it's not quite good enough, but Madison Down to the top of the timesheets, 127.91. Gilliam, Myers, Maloney, there goes Rudd to P2. James Scott up into 8th place. Looks like the TTR show for the time being, but Lobs Esports is knocking, so is Altus Esports.
And when you talk of things, remember we talked about Dylan Rudd at the top of the show. He's got an opportunity to learn as much as he possibly can. That's a statement. That lap time there is very, very important for getting his season. It's not just a banker. It's better than a banker. That is a top quality lap. Is it enough for pole? No, it's not quite. But now he can really play with the margins. He can pick his people. He can really have a go at the rest of this qualifying lap. Why? He's got a front row lap in on the board as it currently stands. Now it's going to come down to timing. Who gets the lap in when that temperature hits its most optimum? Who's going to be there? Who's going to set the lap when it counts?
That's exactly the case. And, we're talking about timing. Didn't fall Ken Ladder's way, but it can fall the way of these guys if they time their run out of the pits correctly. Teammates will obviously be coordinating going out on track together because this is such a fast circuit. The slipstream is so important. You need to have someone out there with you so you can get that little extra speed boost.
Yeah, and we saw that from Ken Ladder, didn't we? Really had no one to work with, and all of a sudden he finds himself 0.6 of a second off the pace. That's, is Ken Ladder 0.6 of a second off the pace? I think he's closer than that. I think he's maybe 3 tenths at the absolute most in things. Is he a front row driver? No, he's absolutely not. But at the same time, he's definitely closer than that. He's going to have to start off the rear as it currently stands. Good lap for Madison Down. But think about the way that Madison Down operates. And Reese, track temperature's just dipped. We're in the 29 degrees Celsius range, 29.4 right now. That means you need to get cracking with this lap, but you've got to give yourself the tire to do so. If there was somebody who missed that first round of laps and set this one right now, they might have jumped out at the top.
Yeah, exactly. So drivers that waited might have gone a little bit better, but this is the thing, a cloud falling over the circuit, the sun is blocked. This could make the track temp drop another degree besides. So
It has.
Oh,
it's
it
28.9 right now. Yeah, it's dipped again.
Oh, okay. So you want to get your laps in, get them in now. Look at the fluctuation there on the weather graph. It dipped before and now it's dipping back down again. Let's see if the cycle repeats itself and it starts rising in the next 10 minutes.
I think we've got a couple of clouds in there. Oh, there's a huge check up in the rain. Robbie Gribbs has just been drilled from behind. There's so much contact in this train right now. Everyone's trying to get themselves sorted. Gibbs is going to have to go because he's going to get a fresh car back now. So now this lap gets aborted for him. There's going to be a bunch of guys that just sort of dive out of this train and drive this lap really, really quickly. They've got to get back to the lane.
Yeah, they do. So this was all started with the Phoenix racing teammates, Dylan Pereira and Rehan Leonage. They were at the front of the train and they slowed right down. They wanted to let other drivers by, but nobody wanted to go by them because they needed the slipstream. So that's just created a bunch of confusion and a huge checkup right in the middle of the pack, and it's damaged quite a few cars.
Yeah, there are a ton of drivers with damage. So we said Robbie Gibbs was one of them. Kuznetsov's another. What's Gibbs doing here? Is he trying to actually go on this lap, or is he just getting out? I think he might be getting out of the way.
Yeah, I'm sure he's aware of the damage that he's got at the moment. Poor Rick Kuznetsov. He ran good enough for 7th on his initial qualifying lap, and it looks like the majority of them are going for the pits now, at least the drivers that got damage. It seems like Andrew Gilliam is in there as well, but the laps begin for the rest of the field here, those who avoided making contact with others. We'll keep an eye on Dylan Rudd around this lap because he's got a little bit of a slipstream from the Phase 4 Mustang up ahead. He's got a 127.9 to improve on. Madison Down, meanwhile, has got the Phoenix Racing teammates ahead of him, and they're a little bit slower, just a bit. It's only a matter of a tenth or so. Should still be enough for Down to catch them up a little bit over the course of this lap and get some slipstream benefit himself.
Guess what? Track temp just dipped again, Reese. So this is the best it's ever going to be in this session. It's now down in the 27s. I've got about a 27.8 degrees Celsius is what it's showing on my software that I'm looking at this point in time. And you can see the track cover. That cloud cover's really come over. See the clouds in the background, but have a look at the shadows that are on circuit at the moment. Remember what I said about making sure that you got to get a good lap together. That's absolutely important. But timing that lap. If you come out and that's all you've got at the start of the server and you go, yep, that was a good banker, makes you calm down, settles you, means you're a little bit more accurate with this lap, the nerves settle a little bit more. If you haven't set that good lap, you're looking at those temperatures right now, all of a sudden someone's in your ear, you've got to go now, this lap's got to be good. The pressure rises, the mistakes creep out. Look at the drivers we've already seen make mistakes tonight.
Yeah, Madison Down had a little bit of a lock-up at MG. He might have been on a faster lap here, but Dylan Rudd, I think, will be given a little leg up with that tiny mistake from the four-time V8SCOPS champion. Dylan Rudd to the line then as the times come across the line. Pereira and Flock good enough for 24th. Brady Myers and Jake Maloney to the top. Josh Anderson making it a TTR 1-2-3 for a moment before James Scott crashes the door down and says, hello, 127.7, eat that.
Yeah, well, that's eat that, and I mean that's championship leader kind of lap right there. Do you write home about that one? Do you bank that one in? Suns just poke back out on the surface. Reese, I think that might have been the window. Although the track temp has just come down again. Remember, we've got that second pack going through 27.2 track temp at this point in time. So maybe we need to drop back to where Gilliam and Kuznetsov and Robbie Gibbs are at this point in time. Yeah. This could be a pole quartet at the moment, just because if these guys can nail this lap, they've got the best conditions we've seen. I don't know it's going to improve. I'm just not certain it will improve.
Yeah, who knows at this stage. This is going to be a very intriguing trio to watch. These three here, Gibbs, Gilliam, and Kuznetsov, all working together as best they can. Gibbs is going to be the one with the disadvantage here. Soul Evolution car out there at the moment with no one to help him in the draft, but Gilliam's going to be getting some slipstream off of him. Kuznetsov will be getting some slipstream off Gilliam. This will be a very interesting lap to watch.
Yeah, it's worthwhile monitoring the sectors and monitoring these sectors up against our pole times as it currently stands. And the more I see around this track, I'm seeing sunshine back out on the racetrack. I think the golden period to get that perfect lap in is passing as we speak. And these guys are going to get their opportunity at it. They're going to get the best of the conditions, but not by much. It's only going to be slightly more supreme. But this lap, the pressure that's on this lap, you can already see it was a little bit darker the last time we were through here, but it's lightening up as we talk.
Yeah, it looks like the temperature is staying stable, if not coming down a little bit. We're seeing here half a tenth behind James Scott at the moment is this lap for Andrew Gilliam. So a lot to come from this. He's catching up to Gibbs a little bit too through the last few corners of the lap. This is going to be a fun end to this hot lap for these three. Gibbs immediately goes back into the pit lane. He's decided to abandon that lap. Should he have stayed out and taken advantage? Where will Andrew Gilliam and Rick Kuznetsov put themselves here across the line for the 201? And it's a 127.8. He jumps his way up to fifth. Kuznetsov went faster.
And that's Rick getting a really, really good opportunity. Rick Kuznetsov's another driver who's swapped around in terms of teams. Again, same thing, was with the 9.5 Sim Sports outfit last time around, last time on the block. He wanted something different, wanted to work on something, was known for his Porsche Cup driving, needed a change around it. And remember, this was not somebody sitting down and saying, hey, I didn't like somebody I was working with. It was Rick saying to the guys around him, I want to work on something different, a little bit of a different skill set with a different group. That's what led to that change. And look at what Andrew Gilliam's done for him right there. I think that's a little bit faster than Kuznetsov was necessarily capable of, but he was in the right spot at the right time. But Reese, another half a degree's come out of that track temp.
It has, and look who's out on track. Literally everyone else. I love this. I love the games that people play in this championship. Jordan Ross is the leader of the train here, and they're all going to try and get across in time. 4 minutes remain on the clock, and I think considering the pace they're going at right now, everyone should be able to get across the line for one more lap, but it's going to be borderline for those at the back of the train.
Have a look at where Brady Myers is, by the way, shadowing James. I think James Scott's actually thinking about overtaking Leonage here. So the cars that would currently stand is Dylan Rudd, Rayhan Leonage, James Scott, Brady Myers in terms of where they are in the queue. Just ahead of them, Jake Maloney. He's P3. So there's a few little games played back and forwards here. And I think Scott's going to try and overtake Leonage. Look at the outfoxing. Just positions his nose ahead. Now he's right on his teammate. Now he knows that he's in that spot. Leonage gives it to him. Myers was trying to shadow him there. Have a look at where Brady Myers put his nose. He's missed an opportunity there to go with James Scott. That was intentional.
Yeah, indeed. So, got drivers thinking about the meta all through the outlap here, but it's time to take your focus away from that and focus on driving the gosh darn car around the circuit for one more go with 2 minutes and 51 seconds on the clock. They pile on the power out of the final corner, and to the front of the train will come Luke Rosella at the front of the train. No one helping him. Will Rosella be able to improve on what is currently 10th spot for him?
Yeah, well, it's going to be important, isn't it? This lap's down to 26.7 degrees Celsius based upon what I'm looking at. So it's coming down. The air temp's been relatively static. I haven't seen a huge degree in that. It's the cloud cover that's changed things. We're back out into sunshine, though. So the track is going to warm up towards the tail end of this lap. Will it change all that much? Oh, not 100% sure. But this is the time. You got to set it. It's the last lap dash in terms of qualifying. This is your opportunity, and Scott's narrow when he gets down here to the right hand hairpin. I think Myers had a little bit of a better entry, but he's so far back that toe's not huge.
No, it's not quite enough for Brady Myers. He's going to have to find something else here. Maybe break a little bit earlier into MG, get a straighter exit out, carry that momentum down the start-finish straight. Myers isn't going to be giving much help to Anderson, his teammate behind him either. A little bit too far ahead for any meaningful slipstream. Wide, meanwhile, goes Dylan Pereira, and that's an awkward spot at MG. He does stay off, but on the brakes goes James Scott. Unfortunately, slowing down and off the circuit for him. I don't think Scott's going to be able to improve. So now it's down to Brady Myers. Does he have the time in hand to try and take pole position for Phillip Island Race 1? Jordan Ross improves up to 12th place as the time's flowing across the line. Maloney goes faster than Myers, but then Myers goes faster than him. Up to P1. Josh Anderson makes it a Trans-Tasman 1-2. James Scott down to 3rd.
Yeah, and Maloney as well, right there and in contention in terms of things. Look at Rehan Leonage, was in the right spot in that train, was just in behind Brady Myers. Did Scott turn in a little bit? I think he had his eyes down the track. I think he saw someone have a big old wiggle, and he just chased them. When your eyes are on that driver, you look at them, and sometimes one goes in, the other follows, and that's just what happened in that instant.
Yeah, and with 30 seconds left on the clock, these drivers are not going to be able to finish another lap. It is a heat session, so it's a hard cut to the end of qualifying. Anyone who's out on track right now, they'll be teleported back to the pits the moment the timer hits 0. So I think that's basically set our grid order. This is the onboard from James Scott, and he's got Dylan Rudd up ahead of him. You see Pereira going wide out of MG, and I think Scott might have been distracted a little bit.
Yeah, that's not a mistake that he commonly makes, but remember, they're right on the limit of grip there as well. So it's easy to say, you know, you look up and you see someone make that mistake in and around you, and that's just how it runs. But my word, that was an electrifying qualifying session.
Absolutely loved it. And we can go through the final order here as we go to the grid for race 1. Brady Myers on pole position alongside Josh Anderson. Trans-Tasman is back, and in a big way. But James Scott breathing down their necks for Lobs Esports alongside Jake Maloney in car 29. Rehan Leonage, top 5 performance in qualifying. Youngest driver in the field and looking good for race 1 here. Rick Kuznetsov in 6th place, first of the Altus Australia squad. Sebastian Flock, Evolution Racing Team's fastest, and 7th alongside Andrew Gilliam. And then Madison Down and Dylan Rudd will round out the top 10. What a stacked first part of the field.
My word, and it's going to be most of the way back throughout the field as well. Cam Jones, we saw him quick very, very early on in that session, gets 11th spot. He'll be reasonably happy with that, off alongside Luke Rosella in 12th spot. We'll move back to Robbie Gibbs. Thought he might have had a shot, didn't quite get the lap together. Jordan Ross will start off alongside of him as we move our way back throughout the field, back to 15th and 16th. Adam Briggs, remember, we were talking about him early in that session. Luke Mitchinson, Jacob O'Reilly, and Blake Warboy is going to be off the row behind them. Rounding out your top 20, Scott Gamble and Jamie Stovald.
Head of 9.5 Sim Sports, Sean McNamara, is going to start out at 21st alongside Kurt Stenberg, his 170th race start in V8SCOPS here. Ben Morris for Phase 4 alongside Racecraft Simulations' Brian Borg. Teo Sorono in the 888 Altus Australia machine, starting alongside Tom Freer, who was looking very quick at Montreal last round. Brenton Hobson starting alongside Paul Young for 27th and 28th. Rounding out your top 30, we got Dylan Pereira and Jamie Dyke, the first of our split 2 podium there. Good performance from Jamie. Bo Albert's going to start alongside Jamie Machado, 31st and 32nd. Then we have Damian Johnston and Thomas Freeman, 33rd and 34th. Kenneth Latter, all on his lonesome in the last and 35th spot on the grid here. Oh boy, now the tension builds. And we wait to see our top 3 emerge onto the grid here as everyone tries to keep their tyres as warmed up as possible. They will cool down a bit as they sit on the grid. This is the 200th V8 SCOPS race start. A long history that this league has, and it will continue here in, I think, Scott, one of the most competitive fields I've seen at Phillip Island.
Oh boy, isn't it competitive up and down the field, and we saw it zigzag throughout qualifying as well. You know, it's went one way, then it went another, then it came back again. Just looking, I think we got a car missing on the left-hand side of that grid. I think it's 3rd spot. And finally jumped in. It was James Scott, our series leader. That'd be disaster if he didn't get onto that grid. It's going to be a long night. There's a couple guys out of sequence. I'd hate to be Ken Latter right now, but at the same time, maybe you can resurrect something. Run it long, save some fuel, do whatever you can. This is a strategy race. Make no testament to that. It's get aggressive, but do it in the right ways. Be in 10th spot at the end of that first race, and your night progresses.
Here we go then, revs rise, and race 200 of V8 SCOPS is go! Fantastic start from Brady Myers, leaves them in the dust as he goes down to turn 1. Josh Anderson will have to try and defend from James Scott, who himself got a very good run on the way into the first turn. Here they come, full field of Australian touring cars, and off the circuit goes Josh Anderson, protects the inside from James Scott. Rehan Leonage will try and take advantage of this to get on the podium. Look at the run there from the Phoenix Racing Team 79. He's going to be side by side with Scott. Coming into Miller Corner, the most dangerous spot on lap 1. They make contact. James Scott going to try and protect the inside, or will he? There goes Maloney to try and find his way up the inside, but it doesn't work. James Scott just defends.
Yeah, had to be aggressive, had to cover it, had to move down the inside. Maloney got a run. Scott's had 2 rubs already on this opening lap. He had a rub with Anderson at turn number 1. He's had a rub now with Rehan Leonage, so he's not making friends around him. And if you're going to be a championship winner, you've got to make friends with the guys around you sometimes. Get them to work with you, know when to take a points night. Scott is good at that. He can when he's on his game, but just everything, all the drama around this sort of a night, I reckon it's going to be more elbows out racing.
Madison down, we keep an eye on as he makes his way past Andrew Gilliam at MG Corner. They got Dylan Rudd right in the midst of that fight as well. Robert Gibbs and Sebastian Flock, the 2 ERT cars, will take advantage if there's a coming together between these drivers through the flat-out final corner. And that is lap 1 of 14 completed. It's 3 straight-up sprint races tonight. No pit stops, no strategy calculations to be done. It's just hard racing all the way through.
Yeah, sometimes it makes for the best racing, and sometimes it makes for the worst racing. Sometimes there's drama, sometimes there's a little bit of something in the water, and sometimes the boys just make a little bit of something special. I wonder about James Scott. What's his mentality? What's going through his head? Jamie Dyke made the feature. Sean McNamara and a car off.
Oh, yep. So someone's had a problem there. Jamie Machado, it seems, all the way at the back of the field now. Kenneth Latter has been steadily making up places. He's up to 31st now. So we'll see where he is by the end of it. Hobson making his way past Borg. Pereira making his way past Latter. Borg and Hobson actually trading places for 25th. Very close fighting between those guys. And these guys on screen right here, they show no signs of shaking each other off. Altus Australia, TTR, Altus and Lobs. Meanwhile, it's TTR versus Phoenix here for 4th place as Jake Maloney tries to find a way past Rehan Leonage. James Scott already knocking on the door of the top 2 of Myers and Anderson, with Gibbs now making his way past the 9.5 of Cameron Jones, and Andrew Gilliam goes for a slide. Robbie Gibbs off the circuit.
Well, Robbie Gibbs' week's already been made. He won't be too worried about that. Yeah, it'll be annoying, but he'll still sit back and go, gee, Wednesday night was a good night on the sim, and he'll be looking back at that for a long time. But now he's got to settle himself in. He's not had the best of qualifying performances. Reese, I'll put 2 questions to you. Would you rather have a bad qualifying run and be the last group out on circuit? You don't have all that long to shake it off. Sometimes it fires you up. Or would you rather be in Ken Ladder's shoes? You had 15 minutes to sit there and watch everyone else do laps where you were living every moment. Does that linger in your psyche?
I'd rather have a good qualifying performance, honestly, because I'm not that good at passing. And you have to be good at passing to go anywhere in V8SCOPS. You've got to be brave on the brakes. You don't get into this series without being aggressive. And speaking of aggression, Jordan Ross defending from Luke Rosella. There's a bump behind. Blake Warboys almost got turned by Adam Briggs.
Yeah, it's difficult to be in this midfield. It's not easy at any stretch of the imagination. Briggsy thought he had pace, thought he had settled in. Probably looked at the end of qualifying and went, yep, I'm happy with that lap. I'm right there. I'm going to be in contention. Then the weather changed. Now you got to fight your way through the field. Only 14 laps. We're coming to the end of the third one of them, so we're nearly right up on. We'll be past 12 kilometers raced at this point in time at the end of this lap. So it's going to be an interesting one. You're going to see a little bit more risk taken. Who's going to be the first to take a big old brave move and get deep in on the brakes? Maybe make a mistake, run someone a little bit wide and squeeze that move on down. Who's going to have the best tyres at the end of the race as well? Because sometimes you just save a little bit. You know that you can pass these guys on those last 2 laps.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the race length is right on the bubble for how long the tyres generally last in these cars at their optimum pace. So I think the drivers are going to be pushing as hard as they can, especially those who are a bit out of position compared to where they started. And keep an eye on Madison Down, running the number 72 for this year, as his usual number, 77, was taken after he didn't spend most of last season racing in V8SCOPS, trying to make his way past into the top 6. And look at that, this is the 4-time champion at work, making up a little bit of time on Rick Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov going wide, but he's not going to let down through without a fight.
And he pinched a brake there. That's a little bit of heat in the tyres, a little bit of wear out of the tyres, a little bit of something gone. Madison, remember Madison, how he approaches his racing. He's smooth, he's consistent, he's right there, he's accurate every little bit of corner. He's going to pester you, he's going to harass you in that rear view mirror. And that does cast a spell on some of the guys that are around him sometime. Rick Kuznetsov, best spot he's been in a very, very long time. And watch Madison just go to work.
Yeah, on board with one of the most legendary drivers in Australian sim racing, coming out of the final few corners. Just behind, notice Sebastian Flock having some drama. Cameron Jones managed to get past him just for a brief moment, but Flock is back by into 10th place. Sebastian, I think, will be hoping for a bit better out of this race. He started in 7th and he's had a bit of a rough go at it, but there goes Madison Down past Rick Kuznetsov into turn 1. The fight still continuing here between Flock and Jones. Jones with the inside into turn 2 and trying to follow him through is Jordan Ross. Maybe the Lobs Esports car of Luke Rosella as well. 3 positions lost for Flock in 1 lap. Probably wouldn't be a great record for him to have, but he's going to try and defend this one coming into Miller Corner. Rosella on the racing line. Flock just struggling to get the front end to grip up there.
Yeah, still wiggling, still not settled. And that's going to allow Luke Rosella to get to the inside at Subura. Just barely kept enough alongside. Now he's going to get the drive off. He's on the outside. No grip. Rosella wiggles on. Boy, look at the elbows out that they're going. And Sebastian Flock, think about how he's feeling under the helmet at the moment. He's just been passed by 3 guys. He's got to get back into this queue. He's got to do something to protect his position. And then Rosella shoves the nose in as well. Boy, it's difficult to be under Sebastian Flock's lid at the moment.
It's difficult to be Teo Sorono as well, because he's just had a massive off on the exit of Miller. It was 3-wide contact with him, Tom Freer, and Jamie Stovold, 2 of the Synergy cars, I think, bullying the Altus Australia Mustang into a spin, unfortunately. But it seems like everyone who started the race is still going without much in the way of damage. This is a pretty good record for a race that we thought was going to be chaos. This is what happened to Sorono. So Stovall got up the inside, Sorono was sent wide, and then Freer decides to try and come through and make it 3 wide, and they all just come together into the same bit of track. Bo Albert had to take avoiding action as well.
Yeah, a difficult night at the office. That's not how you want to kick things off, but there's 2 races to go. Still can get a big old haul of championship points. Time to talk a little bit about the format as well. Don't forget, this is the first ever time that race points won't matter in terms of things. If you get a bad finish in one of the races, but you still finish overall really high up in terms of the round, that's what counts, round points. Individual race points only count when you finish the round. Round points will be what matters.
Indeed they will. And so drivers who are on the verge of the top 10, they will be looking to dial up the aggression more and maybe help out their round points with a potential pole position start for race 2. Speaking of 2s, the top 2 getting caught by James Scott. Brady Myers and Josh Anderson broke away from them a little bit, but Anderson dialing up the pressure on Myers. Looks like they both slowed each other up a little bit. James Scott right on them. Rehan Leonage looking on in the background, waiting for something to emerge. Kuznetsov now facing off against Dylan Rudd here, potentially going to lose 7th spot with a great run from the Lobs Esports car, who just sneaks through on the inside line into turn 1. There was just enough room given there by Kuznetsov. Can he hold it? Can he hold it through turn 1? He certainly can. Once again becomes inside for turn 2. And Dylan Rudd's going to have to wait a little longer to get the move done.
Oh, there was nearly a rat-a-tat-tat wrapped out on the rear bumper right there of Rick Kuznetsov. He's struggling at the moment to keep those tyres underneath him. Best placed of the Altus cars as it currently stands. But yeah, you're right. James Scott's just sneaking into the picture, just lurking. Again, think about how our championship guys, the guys that are capable of winning races on the regular, the guys that have got raw talent, sneaking in, accuracy, consistency, that's what it's all about. And again, James Scott, pace, raw pace, absolutely out there, but right now showing you what consistency looks like. I think Reese as well, he might have just brought his tyres in. He got a couple laps there where he was just sort of able to just run a little bit, not push 110 tenths the entire way around. Might have run about 98, 99% of what he was capable of for that little period of time. Might have saved some rubber.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. While the tyres will stay at their optimum grip levels throughout most of this race, if you work them too hard and overheat them, then they'll go down in pace a lot quicker. So being able to back off for just a few moments, let the tyres cool down slightly, it will give you something more to fight with later on. Well, we're past half race distance now, 7 laps to go, and Myers and Anderson are a little bit closer than I expected them to be. This is going to be an interesting fight for the win. Hopefully the TTR machines will be able to hold off the fight from Lobs Esports, and same for Synergy as well, because Luke Rosella, formerly of Synergy Sim Racing, starting to gearing up a move on his former teammate.
Yeah, and remember, that's quite critical for right now in terms of the race. Remember, we're looking at about 7 laps from home as it currently stands. The problem for Rosella, he's sitting 12th. He needs to get the 10th spot. They're taking some time out of Cam Jones ahead of him as he's going to sneak down to the inside. He's all out of shape at the apex. They'll make contact, but up ahead, have a look at Kuznetsov and Gilliam all out of shape. No, it was Kuznetsov, sorry, my apologies. And someone else that was all out of shape. It was Gilliam.
It was Gilliam indeed. Andrew Gilliam rejoining the racetrack, but a long way down in 17th place. That's going to sting there for Andrew Gilliam, who looked incredibly quick. So here's the move. Dylan Rudd on Rick Kuznetsov, and Kuznetsov was sent sprawling across the track. Gilliam just came through there. Looks like Cameron Jones was collected too.
Well, if you wanted a 2-for-1 special on Altus Esports Australia drivers, well, you just got it if your name's Dylan Rudd.
Yeah, indeed you did. Don't know how hard race control's going to be looking at that, though. Looking at the race control log in Sim, they've assigned racing incident to all the incidents that they reviewed so far. That's very slow out of the final corner for Cameron Jones. This will be interesting to see whether or not the move will be made. It certainly will. Is it going to be 2, maybe even 3 positions lost here for Cameron Jones? Looking a little bit rattled after that adventure at Miller.
So he was actually already starting to ail back in terms of the tyres. In terms of things with Cameron Jones, he was coming back to the guys that were actually in behind him at this point in time. The other driver for me that was really starting to come back to their fellows was Rick Kuznetsov. Now, he had a little bit of a margin. He was going to finish inside the top 10. His teammate, Andrew Gilliam's outside of that 10 at the moment. So they've lost out pretty significantly. But for Rick Kuznetsov, he's inside the 10. Blake Warboys is that guy that's sort of sitting there.
gentle. McNamara sent off in the 951. There was a big crush at Miller. Looked to me like Kurt Stenberg, no, not Kurt Stenberg, Andrew Gilliam tapped Jacob O'Reilly around, and unfortunately McNamara was speared off the track in the melee. Stenberg's just been minding his own business in this pack. He's been right in it, but he hasn't been involved in anything so far. Touch wood if you're a Stenny fan. Jacob O'Reilly defends from Stenberg on the way into MG.
Did you just... That's one of the best commentators' curses I've ever seen. I hope for Stenny. I hope Stenny's not going to have words with you later.
No, don't worry. Maybe he will. We'll have to wait and see. 5 laps to go at the front of the field, and no change in terms of... actually, big change in terms of position. Josh Anderson has taken the lead from Brady Myers in the midst of all of that chaos we were talking about. So, trade between the TTR cars. It hasn't slowed them up all that much, but I think Brady Myers is starting to fall back a tiny bit. James Scott is on the prowl here. He's looking to take advantage, and we can't count out Ryan Leonage, Jake Maloney, and Madison down. This could be a proper chain of cars when we get to the final few laps.
Well, the fastest cars on track that last lap were actually Jake Maloney and Madison down. I was just looking at those numbers. Then there's sort of 3 cars. That next 10th in behind them was Josh Anderson, James Scott, Ryan Leonage. So, sorry, my apologies. Josh Anderson, Brady Myers, Rayhan Leonage. James Scott was actually not all that quick on that most recent lap. Got checked up a little bit. That's the overtake for the race lead. That's the change of hands for it. And that's how Josh Anderson got it in terms of things. Doesn't quite get it done all the way through the hay shed, but it'll be when they get to Lukey Heights. It's, you know, you've got to be on the left-hand side of the road to get through there.
Yeah, and James Scott almost sniffed a move into second spot there, but Myers got back online nice and quick and also defended from him a little bit there too. So a good heads-up racing from the TTR drivers. They know how to race each other hard without costing each other too much time. And of course, no team orders at Trans-Tasman Racing. Rayhan Leonage, meanwhile, well, he's been losing out a little bit now. He's trying to chase down, but Jake Maloney is looking very good here for a potential move into the top 4. Now's about the time we should start focusing on the battle for 10th as well, because that is race 2 pole position. It's currently held by Rick Kuznetsov, and he has got a long train of cars behind him looking to take advantage. Warboys, Flock, Briggs, and Gamble, and potentially Andrew Gilliam if he can get some pace back.
Oh boy, Andrew Gilliam's going to be fired up after his race went by the wayside in terms of things. Don't expect him to be too complacent back there. He'll be looking for a stronger finish. Won't be happy with where he's sitting at the moment. Kuznetsov did take some time out of Jordan Ross on that most recent lap. So Synergy Ross is coming back to them just a fraction at this point in time. So keep half an eye on that. Keep thinking about that. Luke Rosella's got a reasonable finish locked up. There's a couple of drivers here inside that top 10 for Lobs that are doing really, really well at the moment. Really well situated. It's pretty even in terms of the TTR versus Lobs battle, I'll tell you what, in terms of the overall point.
Yeah, it is. Incredibly competitive teams, those two, and very well matched as we run up to the line to make it 3 laps to go. Battle for 9th down the bottom of your screen right now. 9th currently held by Jordan Ross, so he's got a front row start for race 2 in hand here. I don't know if he's going to be able to catch Luke Rosella with the times that he's putting down, but could potentially be Rick Kuznetsov looming up on him. Meanwhile, post-race investigation for the contact between Dylan Rudd and Rick Kuznetsov at Miller on lap 8. Now, it was Rudd making the move on Kuznetsov there, so I think there might be a penalty hanging over Dylan Rudd's head, but we'll have to wait and see if race control decides that to be the case. Jake Maloney, meanwhile, getting up the inside of Rayhan Leonage at turn 4.
Yep, so that's important. That's really, really important. And Maloney was quick over the last couple of laps, really starting to come back to these leaders. Leonage would just be sitting there and just going, look, 5th place is still a huge bank of points, and I'm going to start ahead of this guy. He's sort of fading just a little bit. Wasn't fading too much, but he's just too far back, and just an opportunity presented itself. Kuznetsov, though, is coming at Jordan Ross. He's got pace in this car at this point in time. Big old question mark hanging over him from the penalty front, but at the moment, there's nothing that's going to happen in this race, and that means this will decide grid spots for race number 2.
Yeah, that it will. We keep our eye on the front, though. Myers here in second place. and you can put nothing between these top 3 drivers here. Anderson has been running the quickest of them, but Jake Maloney with that pass on Leonard showing that he still has some pace left in him. And if there's a problem over the next 2 laps for any of our top 3, Maloney will be there to strike. Madison Downs sitting on the back of the train there as well. And have a look at Rick Kuznetsov. There's a post-race investigation hanging over his head as well for an unsafe rejoin on lap 8, and I think that was after the incident with Dylan Rudd. But he's going to try and once again make hay with the sun while the sun shines. Potentially that is the contact with Cameron Jones that Rick Kuznetsov had after his alleged unsafe rejoin. Jones all the way down the field right now, trying his best to make something of a race that has certainly not gone his way.
Well, I'll tell you what, at this point in time, Jake Maloney looks super strong, but so does James Scott. Brady Myers is ailing just a little bit, was the slowest of this lead bunch the last time around. So in terms of things, he's got a little bit of questions that need to be answering, but Maloney's still coming back at these guys. I wonder how aggressive they're going to be. Remember, 3 races to score points tonight? How aggressive you're in race 1, because if you're aggressive here, you take yourself out of contention for the next one. That is the question all of these guys will be asking themselves. This might just be one of those times where just check a box instead of being too aggressive for this first race.
Yeah, it is only race 1 of the night. We got 2 more to go. You've got to look at it as basically one race split into 3 at some points. So can't afford to be too much of a kamikaze in the first race, but there might be potential here as it is the final lap. James Scott still holding station behind the 2 TTR cars of Anderson and Myers. Maloney, his lap was a 129.7. That's roughly on par with what Anderson set. It is a 10th faster than James Scott. So considering the distance between them, don't think there's much of a chance of him getting the move done there, but it is still on for 9th place. Jordan Ross versus Rick Kuznetsov. It doesn't look like either of these drivers are in too much danger for race 2 pole position, but if they come together, they have got a whole group from Warboys all the way down to Gilliam to take advantage of that.
Oh, look how dangerously close Kuznetsov. He's been coming. If this race was another 2 laps longer, I think he'd have him. I think he'd have him hands down. But because it's sort of that fraction too short, he's been coming at him. Kuznetsov was not quick out of the gate. He was sorry, I'll change that up. He was relatively quick out of the gate and then ailed quickly and then stabilised really nicely. So he's responded in terms of his overall lap pace. That's been good from him. He's got to defend those middle sections of this next race, but he's quick out of the gate. That's a really, really big key. You'll take a 10th spot, pole position race number 2. You won't fight it over this one too much. It's just not worth it. This is too much to lose.
Well, opposite of losing for Josh Anderson, V8SCOPS race 200 goes the way of Trans-Tasman Racing with a 1-2 there. Anderson and Myers. James Scott gets onto the podium, and it looks like Jordan Ross is going to hold off Rick Kuznetsov to the line. So that confirms Rick as your pole position man for race 2. Fantastic stuff. Great racing all throughout the field. Absolutely love Phillip Island and the racing that it provides.
Oh boy, yeah, it was epic. It was, there was unbridled aggression up and down the field in some places. In other spots, it was a little bit sedentary, but that's Phillip Island. That's the nature of it. You got to be there. You got to put yourself in the right places. You got to save just a fraction of tire. It's hard on them around here. Perfect little way to start the race. And the fact we get a reverse grid race, I love reverse grid races, Reese.
Yeah, I do too. There's your unofficial results from race 200. Anderson, Myers, Scott, Maloney, and Leonards, your top 5. Down, Rudd, Rosella, Ross, and Kuznetsov. Flip them, and that is your top 10 for race 2, which is starting momentarily. The rest of the field will start as they finished. Blake Warboys into 11th place, up from 18th. He'll be happy with that. Flock, Briggs, and Gamble, they had some varying fortunes, didn't they? But aside from Flock all gaining spots, Gilliam down to 15th. He'll be looking to make good of that in the 2nd and 3rd races tonight. Stenberg, 22nd to 16th. Great run up the field from him. Hobson rounding out the top 20, gaining 7 spots. And finally, Kenneth Latter started last place. Scott managed to make his way up to 23rd. So good on Ken for that.
Yeah, responded really, really well. Reset himself. I've seen him be a little bit too aggressive over times. How about Bo Albert, though, up 12 spots? That was a really, really good drive. And then Ken Latter as well, up 12 spots. There was a number of big movers and shakers. Unfortunately, there was a number of big movers and shakers in the opposite direction as well. And we've lost some cars out of our top 10 towards the tail end of things. So Anderson chalks up race win number 200. Get ready for another one.
Yep, very short break here with 40 seconds left on the grid timer for race 2. Actually, a 5-minute hold on the grid. My apologies. So had a bit of a panic there for a moment, but we can catch our breath and relax. V8SCOPS race 201 is coming up next.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
You're watching SimSpeed TV, V8SCOPS round 2 for 2024. We got the 200th race done and dusted in spectacular fashion. Now we move on to the final 2 of the night. This is going to be so much fun with a reverse top 10 for race 2. I'm Reese Gardner. It is Scott Rankin with me in the comms box. Jay Kennedy pressing all the buttons behind the scenes. Scott, it is time to see what Rick Kuznetsov can do to convert that 10th place finish into a potential race win.
Yeah, an interesting one in terms of things. We've had some results come through as well. Contact between 55 and 143. Post-race is getting redressed and the engines start to rise. This is race start for race number 2 here, Reese.
It is indeed. Grid time over and race 201 is go. Look at that start from Madison down. Fantastic stuff. Luke Rosella was bogged down off the line there. So this is going to be interesting coming into turn 1. Down trying on the inside of Luke Rosella coming into the first turn. Cars fanning out all over the place. The top 10 have been reversed. There's a lot of potential here for big incidents. Down sent wide, a bit of contact between him and Rosella as James Scott also comes through. Same for Brady Myers and Josh Anderson. The Trans-Tasman cars all in the same piece of racetrack. Rick Kuznetsov will be loving this.
Oh, of course he will be. It's, you know, big rival. And what a rare mistake from Madison Down. Oh, they make contact between him and Scott. That happened on Wednesday night. No more of that. I don't want to see those two cars together and binned again for the second time this week.
Yeah, this is getting a bit hectic here. The Cardiff X TTR cars trying to give each other a little bit of space. This is the onboard from Anderson, who currently sits in 10th spot. He still hasn't been able to make up many places from taking the win in race 1 and getting reversed back to 10th. Into MG for the first time in race 2. Lap 1 of 14 once more will be in the books, and that's the number 63 of Blake Warboys going slow and around is Anderson. Yep, Sebastian Flock also slow. I think those two cars came together.
And there's more cars off. There was a bunch more cars off at the exit of MG.
Final corner! Gilliam, and that's the number 22 of Adam Briggs. Oh, lordy, what on earth has gone on here? One of the phase 4 cars. Oh, no. Oh, dearie me. Okay, this is getting a little brutal. So, black flags to Machado and Freeman. Jamie Machado and Thomas Freeman for jump starts. They didn't quite get off the line when they were supposed to.
Ben Morris has got a meatball too.
Oh dear. So that's why we saw Ben Morris coming into the lane. Maybe some kind of coming together at Miller or Siberia. Regardless, the rest of the field will continue on. This is pretty massive, really. The drivers in the top 10 have remained more or less consistent so far, but man, there's going to be a few non-happy campers after this race.
Well, Ben Morris was actually contact with Andrew Gilliam at the last corner. That was that last shot we saw where Gilliam was trying to rejoin and just sort of didn't have any grip, didn't have the car under control, but it wasn't a huge deal he really could have done. This has given Kuznetsov a whole bunch of breathing room up at the front end of things. This is an opportunity, though. If you're in a reverse grid, I reckon Dylan Rudd's got a really, really good shot of winning this race. If you want to stamp your name into the record books as the first race winner on the other side of race number 200, this is your opportunity.
Here's the replay then of Sebastian Flock and Blake Warboys. So Anderson was a little bit slow here coming into MG, had to check up for Maloney, and Flock just dove in on the inside and turned him around. So from race 1 win to race 2 nowhere, and that's Morris. The incident that potentially got him his meatball. What on earth happened there with Andrew Gilliam? Looks to me like he was just on the inside coming into the last few corners, and all he could do was get spun off.
I tell you what, it's kicking on back up front, so yeah, keep half an eye on this. Is that 3 wide? Yeah, it was 3 wide. He got pinched.
Yeah, that's unfortunate there. And further contact between Briggsy and Gilly. That's very unfortunate indeed, but we keep our eye here on Luke Rosella, who is trying to fire his way back up the field after starting third. Rehan Leonage with a massive defense here.
Yeah, and like I said, remember, Dylan Rudd's got a huge opportunity here. I think he's chomping at the bit, and I think he's got an opportunity for a race win. Rick Kuznetsov's going to do everything in his power to hold these guys up and to back them up, because that's where he's going to excel. Remember, he got out of the blocks really quickly last race? Well, he's done that again. Stretched the margin just a little bit. It's now probably from this next lap through to about lap 8 where he struggles, and then from lap 8 to lap 10, he sort of stabilizes. 10 to 14, he's quick again. So that's where he's got to survive through. The next thing to think about is Madison Downs up to 6th spot. Luke Rosella's just ahead of him. Rosella is going to get the elbows out because these guys have got, just enough beef in the water to say, hey, there's something a little bit going on here. Ben Morris will sidestep the field as they trundle on through, trying to get right out of the way. This has gone nuts, Reese.
It absolutely has. Plenty of drivers out of position from where they started. And we still have 10 laps to decide who finishes where. This is the replay from Seb Flock. So, it looks like contact between Anderson and Warboys initially, and then Flock just went into a rapidly closing door there. That's unfortunate there for the number 84. But good fortune could be smiling on Dylan Rudd here, because Jordan Ross is losing touch with Rick Kuznetsov at the front of this field.
Yeah, but he can't lose too much tusk. So what's got to happen here is that Rudd's got to get this done really, really quickly without losing time. If he loses time to Rick Kuznetsov, all of a sudden he becomes the vulnerable one out of this train. They're in a little bit of a DRS train nearly, to give you a Formula 1 terminology. And I was expecting Ross to sort of cover this because I think Dylan Rudd would have fired it down the inside if he didn't. The other thing, back on that first lap incident with Anderson, I wonder why he was wide. Because think about it, Reese, he just should have shut that door at the last opportunity. Flock should have known that door was always going to shut, but it shut at the last opportunity. But Anderson's not like that. Why would you leave a door ajar? So something, maybe he was locked up, maybe he's a little bit wide, maybe they're connected just a little bit, but that's not typical of Josh Anderson to leave a door open like that.
Yeah, maybe just through all of the activity on lap 1, he was focusing on a couple other things and the car just got away from him in the braking zone. It's very easy to do coming into MG over the rise from Lukey Heights. So, fight for second is compressing. Ross still losing out to Kuznetsov. Rick running 129.5. Same for Jordan Ross, but Dylan Rudd and Rehan Leonage running much faster. Rudd a 29.4, Rehan a 29.3. Same for Luke Rosella as well, but Madison Down is the fastest car in the top 6 right now.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the way that Rudd and Ross's cars are performing a little bit. There's a fraction more downforce on that Dylan Rudd car. He's not. Maybe he's running out a little bit of gear at the end of the back end of the straight. Don't quite know on that front, but he just doesn't look like he's supremely quick in a straight line. Then they get in the braking zones, and Dylan Rudd just shoots right up and nearly into the back of Jordan Ross. So Ross is struggling under the brakes, but he's supremely quick in a straight line. It's actually really helping him defend as it stands. But remember, he ailed late in the last race as well in terms of tyres. So I would say this is going to play out. Rudd's got to get by because he's got to be defending by attacking. If he gets by Jordan Ross, he buys himself some breathing room because Leonage and him are matching times as well. Similar sort of style and agility of those cars. So I think he's got to get this move done soon.
Yeah, he absolutely does. Could this be the opportunity down the start-finish straight? What kind of lap times are we getting here? 129.6 for Kuznetsov, Rudd a 29.8. He's getting held up now behind Jordan Ross, and he has to get the move done very soon. This is looking tight as well between Rosella, Down, and Scott. Down is in a Lobs Esports sandwich right now, and yeah, I saw that incident in Pro Invitational on Wednesday as well, Scott. James Scott and Madison Down want to try and give each other some space here, but Down's not going to be giving Rosella much space here, almost getting into him, coming into Miller. Yep. Oh, he finally has. Rudd up into second, and Leonage going to try and go around Jordan Ross as well. Meanwhile, look at this. Oh, no! Madison Down making contact there with Luke Rosella.
No, Rosella did that on his own. There was no contact.
Did he?
There was no contact whatsoever.
Oh,
it's like as he went to the downshift, he got the downshift a fraction early and it shot the rear end away from him. So Rosella's thrown away a huge opportunity here. And the other thing is they needed that sandwich. They needed to box Madison Down up a little bit and apply some pressure to him, really squeeze him, put him in underneath the hydraulic press and making Madison Down perhaps just a little bit shorter.
Yeah, my apologies. The angle that I was seeing suggested there was contact, but you're right, there was none. Luke Rosella, unfortunately, just losing the rear coming into Siberia. So the chaos continuing here, but no fault to Madison Down for that. So Rick Kuznetsov, he's managed to build up a good gap, but it looks like Dylan Rudd is rapidly bringing it down. Rudd was 0.2 faster on that lap, despite putting the move on Jordan Ross.
Yeah, well, he's got pace now, so he's really going to get an opportunity to show it. And remember, he looks after those tyres quite well. So look for him to come to life. This is the phase of that race. Remember what I said earlier on? This is where Rick Kuznetsov was weak. So he got out, built that margin nicely. Fresh air this time, though. That could change things. That could change that wear profile of those tyres as well, Reece. So it's, yeah, it's not over just yet. And don't forget that Luke Rosella's got a few race wins under his belt as well. So driver of some stature, driver of some talent. That is what pressure does to a race car driver.
That it does. And speaking of pressure further back in the field, Kurt Stenberg put pressure on Scott Gamble and got past him for 11th spot. That'll be an interesting fight, the battle for 11th, with Gamble also now up against Bo Albert. There was a bit of contact between them through Lukey Heights. Here's the move that Stenberg put, and it was a lovely move indeed. Usually when we see that happen, there's some contact about here in the middle of the corner, but Gamble gave Stenberg enough room, and Stenberg stuck to the inside beautifully. That's how you do a move at Miller.
And look at how they all zigzag back in, a real zipper style move as well. Gamble recognised that that was happening. There was nothing he could do to stop that move from happening. So his next thought went, all right, how do I make sure I lose one spot? Look at the number of times we've seen a car tonight get a little bit offline. They don't just lose one spot, they lose three. So that was very heads up driving from Scott Gamble. We went, okay, this is done. Can't do anything about it, but I've got to make sure I don't lose one more.
Oh, a little bit of an off-track adventure there for Robbie Gibbs. We got Brenton Hobson up into 16th place right now. Remember, Gibbs had a very rough time of it in race one. We do have a couple of drive-throughs here, and they are pretty big ones. Sebastian Flock for contact with Josh Anderson, no surprise there. But the big one, Andrew Gilliam, unsafe rejoin at the end of lap one. Remember, we saw that a car sideswiped Gilliam on his way back onto the racetrack. Gilliam was deemed at fault for that, so he's going to have to go through the pits.
Yeah, it's a tough one because race control, and this is one of those things where you can't go into an incident just going, I'm going to hand out a penalty. With Gilliams, was there anything more he could have done? No, there really wasn't. But as a race car driver, the way it works is you should be under control of your race car at every single opportunity. And he probably drove it back out a little bit too harshly out onto the track, and that's what they're penalising there. Was there much more he could have done? Yeah, he could have joined the track at a not so much of an oblique angle, cut straight out and across the track. That's what they're penalising.
Yeah, exactly right. The big rule is to rejoin the racetrack in a safe and predictable manner, and when you don't do that, that is the way things go. So with Kuznetsov now facing a lot of danger here of losing the lead, Dylan Rudd is dialing it up here and almost tapping some Morse code on the rear bumper of the 008 coming through Southern Loop. I sense a move very soon here, Scott.
I sense a move on Jordan Ross because Rehan Leonage had a go last lap. Couldn't quite get the job done. And look at Kuznetsov. He's got to cover him off. I would have switched to the outside if I was Dylan Rudd. As soon as you saw him cover, get back across that track, open the corner up because he's now going to start backing you up. You've got to set this run up and have a look at the battling further back from the TCR boys.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Madison Down, he sensed a move on Rehan Leonage as Ross was on the defensive coming into Miller. It doesn't seem like there's much that he can do at the moment, but remember, James Scott's still there. Meanwhile, let's check in with how our points are looking for the round. Right now, Dylan Rudd is leading, but Brady Myers tying with him on round points. That's considering the positions that they're in right now. So if Brady Myers can get a move done on James Scott, or if Scott comes together with Madison Down, God forbid, that should elevate Myers to the overall lead of the round. But likewise, Dylan Rudd needs to get by Rick Kuznetsov to consolidate his current round points lead.
Oh, here we go. It's right there and right amongst it as well. Have a look at Jordan Ross. Leonage had a go, and then he got covered off, so now he's vulnerable to Madison Down. But the guy who looks like he's on the move is Dylan Rudd. I really get the feeling this is on. This time, he's expecting the block. The block's going to come. Kuznetsov's going to go shallow when they get down here to the braking zone. He's aware of that now, so he's not going to track across to the other side of the road. He's going to stay to the left-hand side, switch back on him, pinches him tight. Watch how he pinches him in here. Doesn't give him the room. Had to pinch him a little bit tight, but now rotates the car better. He's a little bit more accurate. MG might be the spot.
Yeah, I think it'll have to be. It can be pretty easy to pull a move if you know what you're doing. All you got to do is get on the power a bit earlier through Lukey Heights. That'll bring you to the outside of the exit of the corner, which becomes the inside for MG, and you can use that extra momentum to fire yourself down the inside, but you have to make it work. What does Dylan Rudd do this time? It looks like he's just going to keep it nice and gentle here. Defensive again from Kuznetsov on the way into the slowest corner on the circuit. He does get a slight whack, and you know what? This has brought Jordan Ross right back into the midst of it for the podium, and he's going to be dragging everyone behind him with him.
What would you do for a V8 SCOPS race win though, Reese? That's the difference. You and I have never had the opportunity to decide the answer to that question. I was talking about morals, about ethics with the book group that I was reading earlier on in the day. Now it comes down to this. What would you do in this position? How does it change the way you drive? Well, it's changing Rick Kuznetsov. But remember, this guy knows how to drive Porsche Cup cars. Very, very good. Very good at being a defensive driver when he's challenged, but he is being applied pressure to that rear bumper like he's never received before. This is a coming of age in a V8 supercar for Rick Kuznetsov. This is challenging every skerrick of skill that he can muster.
Yeah, here's the potential move once again. Oh, look at that. It's defensive on both counts for first and third. Jordan Ross is desperate to hold on to this podium. Leonage desperate to try and grab the podium, but Madison Down might have something to say about that. Look at this. The entirety of the top 8 has been backed up thanks to those defenses.
Yeah, but think about it from Rehan Leonage's point of view. He knows he's stronger than Jordan Ross. He knows he can get this move done if he's presented with an opportunity. And the other thing is, he can't wait. He's got to be on the outside. He's got to be covering him, because if he's not, Madison Down's having a go around the outside of him. The only way he can progress in this field or hang on to his spot is to be aggressive. If he waits, Down plunges. Down goes down the inside. Forget it. He's in your, all of a sudden, Rehan Leonage disappears through the rearview mirror. Then he becomes vulnerable to James Scott, to Brady Myers. How does Dylan Rudd get this move done though? Watch him. He's crawling all over. He's got to try something different. I think it might even be down here at the Southern Loop.
Yeah, could be. Defensive here from Rick Kuznetsov, and he stays ahead. Jordan Ross manages to keep Rayan Leonage behind him as well. Dylan Rudd is going for his first V8 SCOPS race win. Rick Kuznetsov is going for his second. Kuznetsov already has a race win in the books in top split. Dylan Rudd wants to break his duck here by taking his first. Could also be looking at Jordan Ross potentially taking it here. 2 of the top 2 come together, but Rayan Leonage trying around the outside. Madison Down locks up as they came together, and that's going to allow James Scott through into P5. Now, can Down keep this position here from Brady Myers and Jake Maloney? Once again, the TTR cars are together.
Forget this. I just want to watch it. All of a sudden, I want to take all the other cars out of this and just watch a TTR fun night in the action, because they are not acting like teammates at this point in time. They're all looking to advance their position. Oh, it changes every little lap. Every corner changes something else. Rudd can't follow. He can't follow anymore. He's got to do something. He's being backed up. They all know they're being backed up. Someone's going to jump out of line here.
This is the onboard from James Scott. You saw Down had to get on the brakes so hard, and look at that. That was a brilliant move by James Scott. He saw the door open on the inside, and he was right there instantly.
Yeah, but he had to phase the brake pedal too, Reese. He braked a little bit harder a little bit earlier and then come off it.
Here we go. Oh, just enough room. Sorry to talk over you there, Scott, but Dylan Rudd has the inside for turn 1. Can he get past Rick Kuznetsov, who fires it into turn 1? He's off the racing line, though, and has to give up the race lead.
Well, this will change things now, because Ross has started to look a little bit more strong than Rick Kuznetsov. He's been blocking. He's been covering every little bit of things. There's 2 laps left to run. There's 8.5 Ks worth of racing action here, Reese. And finally, Rudd gets to the head of the field. Where's Ross going to go? Can he put a move on? Can he get into second place? He's vulnerable at the same time to Leonage.
Leonage again trying around the outside of Miller Corner. He's been there pretty much every lap for the last 5 or so laps, but it's just not working. He has to find some other way to position his car there. Down, still defensive versus his teammates here. Maloney and Myers are looking very racy in the dying moments of this race, and they are letting James Scott streak away from them in the slipstream of Rayan Leonage. Now up to MG. Are there any moves to be made for the lead or for second position? Jordan Ross defensive. There goes James Scott up past Rayan Leonage, and now Leonage has to defend from Down through the penultimate corner. Just enough space is given between the 2 Commodores, and I think Leonage will just have it coming into the last turn.
My word, it's getting tight. Look at the scraping on the panels. Look at the panel damage that's been done. Dylan Rudd is breaking the toe. He has to, because this Altus Esports Australia thing quick in a straight line. He struggled at turn 1 last time by. Is Ross close enough to be putting a move on? Is James Scott going to wind up on the podium here?
That's the question. Leonage, meanwhile, gets back past Madison Down. Here's James Scott again with an opportune move to the inside. A little bit of contact versus Rehan Leonage, but I think there was enough overlap that race control would call it a racing incident. Meanwhile, turn 4 for the final time in this race. Leonage defensive on down. There's no change in the top 4, but it's still on for P5. Leonage just keeps down behind. Jake Maloney finds himself on the outside briefly, but decides to form at a line. Leonage is wide. Madison Down's going to do the over-under on him and get the move done coming into Hayshed.
Yeah, he picked up the throttle mid-corner as they went through Siberia, and the car just stepped sideways. He was lucky not to walk it off the road. Now he's vulnerable to Maloney. He's got to cover Maloney. Had to cover Maloney. Got to the inside, covered it off. Is he going to be vulnerable at MG? Well, he's going to go to the right-hand side of the road as well. Go round the outside, says Jake Maloney. I've got to have a crack. There's points on the line here, and it won't be enough. My word, what a race.
What a race indeed. And what a race for Dylan Rudd, who for Lobs Esports is going to put himself on the V8SCOPS Split 1 race winners list for the first time. Car 990 takes the win in race 2 at Phillip Island. Race 201 goes the way of Dylan Rudd. Rick Kuznetsov drove a fantastic defensive race and gets second for his troubles. Jordan Ross holding on to third there. What a fantastic drive from everyone in the top 10.
Oh, that was beautiful, because the thing there, Reese, that made that amazing was Kuznetsov was defensive, but at no stage was he dirty. And Rudd had to work him over, and it's breathing hard, it's panting on his neck, it's tapping out Morse code, but it was clean from both of them. And that is what made that race something else. And I think there's a lot of respect being shown between these guys. How up at 8 cars, throw a blanket over him. And all I can hear in the back end of my mind is Mark Scaife going, he's going to prop him, he's propped him, there's the prop the whole time, because that's what it's about. Defensive positioning, cover it, but cover it well and cover it in the right way. My word, defensive and offensive masterclass, phenomenal racing.
The top 7 covered by 3 seconds. That's magnificent racing, and I think that's one of the best V8SCOPS races we've had in a very long time. Dylan Rudd taking the win by 3/10 from Rick Kuznetsov. Luke Rosella, yes, he made a mistake all by himself, lost the rear coming into Siberia, but still finishing 9th. I think that's a pretty good drive from him. And Blake Warboys getting into the top 10 there. He started 11th, only 1 position gained, but worth pointing out, driver of the number 63 should be happy.
Very, very happy in terms of things. And you look further back and through that field, Josh Anderson, 18th, won the first race of the night, started out 10th, got involved in some shenanigans, and, well, he made some shenanigans on the side of the road at the end of that one. Recovers okay. He'll be disappointed in that one. There's some work to do, and there's only, Reese's 14 laps left to go here as well. Don't forget that. Cam Jones, he's run a reasonable night. Damian Johnson just cracked into this split, remember? 19th on that one. He's had a reasonable points night as well. Hobbo's had a quiet night. We looked at him there for, what, 5 seconds?
Yeah, he was racing with Robbie Gibbs pretty hard, as we saw for a couple of moments in race 2 there. But yeah, quiet night so far for Brenton Hobson, but he's been steadily climbing up. 27th to 20th in race 1, 20th to 16th in race 2. Meanwhile, Kenneth Latter finishing in 21st place. That's up 2 spots there. Jamie Stovald didn't gain or lose anything. Finishes where he started in 22nd with Dyke, Borg, Pereira, O'Reilly, Sorono, Paul Young, Sean McNamara and Adam Briggs rounding out the top 30. Unfortunate for Sebastian Flock, Andrew Gilliam, Thomas Freeman, Jamie Machado and Ben Morris. All those drivers had issues of some sort, be it mechanical or penalty-wise. Here's the replay from Tom Freer. This is Kurt Stenberg and Bo Albert going at it through the last couple of corners. I think this is on the final lap here. The run to the line between them. Now, these 2 cars would have been slowing each other up a little bit. Bo Albert got on the brakes to try and gear up the exit, and he was with it. What's the gap here at the line? Barely enough room. That was magnificent stuff. 0.008 of a second between Bo Albert and Kurt Stenberg at the end of it. Kurt Stenberg ultimately getting 12th place from that.
Oh, I've got to start racing a supercar, Reese. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, if you want a good advertisement for V8 supercar racing on the iRacing platform, you got it. these are the championship standings coming out of the second race. And keep in mind, we still have, round standings, my apologies. These are the round standings so far. Keep in mind that we still have one more race to go. It is a 1-2 for Lobs Esports, 3-4 for Trans-Tasman Racing, but it could all go south or north for any of these drivers come the end of race 3.
Think about Josh Anderson. There was one stage there where he was leading the results at the end of that first one, and he still was climbing, and it all goes wrong, when they get down to MG, and sort of his race was over basically after that. Rick Kuznetsov, I enjoyed that race from him. And like you said, there's already got a win on the board in this split. Wanted number 2 because that starts to move him up in terms of the company. This one can be a fluke, 2 definitely isn't. 2 says you've got some talent. But look at the 3-way tie, Kuznetsov down, Leonage. Whoa! How good was that battle between Madison Down and Ray and Leonage? And Leonage is just going, I've got to pass Ross. I've got to pass him. I've got to put the car here every single point, because if I don't, he will.
Yeah, man. Lot to think about coming into this final race of V8SCOPS at Phillip Island for 2024. We're going to catch our breath one more time, and we'll come back with the run to the finish for round 2. So, it all comes down to this. Race 3, Phillip Island, V8SCOPS 2024 round 2. Checkered flag flies in warm-up, and we've only got a minute hold on the grid before we get started for the final 14-lap race of the night here in Split 1. Reese Gardner with you and Scott Rankin alongside me. Scott, it's been a fantastic night of racing so far, but I always feel like there's this undercurrent of chaos bubbling underneath the surface. Are we going to see that erupt?
Well, it's been building the whole night, Reese. Every race, a step forward. What would you do to win one of these things? What would you do for 5 places on the running order? What would you do for this little bit and piece? Well, if your temper was short for race 1 and 2, man, it's already flaring. You're already up and about of it. But there's now going to be a couple guys, a little bit more energy into them. Things will change for this one.
Indeed, they will. So it's basically as they finished in race 2, there's no field invert for this one. So Dylan Rudd is going to start on pole position, and I think that's the best possible place for him to start. He's looked quick all night. Here we go then. It is time for the revs to rise. Let's see who gets the best start here in race 3 at Phillip Island. We are away. As actually, for a moment, it looked like Jordan Ross was going to get a good start, but the second phase didn't go for him. James Scott's going to get a good run. Kuznetsov pressuring Dylan Rudd coming into the first turn there, but clean racing for the lead as the field comes through. Dewan corner off the circuit. One of the Synergy cars, it was Brenton Hobson, who's just gotten back on track in front of Josh Anderson. And now it is time for the braking zone for Miller. Is there going to be a crash here this time? We've managed to avoid it in the 2 races so far. Defensive from Dylan Rudd here as they all file in to one of the slowest corners on the track. Room given throughout the midfield. Good to see.
Yeah, remember, think about who's been talking to each other in this little gap in between the races. And Dylan Rudd, James Scott, teammates. One on row 1, one on row 2 in terms of things. Jordan Ross got an okay getaway, then sort of spun it a little bit. Well, the same thing happened from both of the drivers on the front row. Both of them looked like they got an initial okay getaway. Kuznetsov's initial launch was good, spun it up a little bit in that second phase, whereas Rudd was the opposite. Didn't quite get the initial launch, got away nicely in that second phase, and then nearly had another half spin on those tyres as well. So he's, it was really phasey in that front row. Scott got a great launch. It's so tight already.
Indeed. Bo Albert getting amongst it as well, side by side with Scott Gamble, and almost thought about it on Tom Freer as well, with Robbie Gibbs trying to pressure the Synergy Mustang. They all fall into line coming out of the final corner, and it's going to be very close here between Gamble and Jones, the 9.5 Sim Sports cars. Look who's joining the party, Luke Mitchinson and Josh Anderson, the winner of race 1, on the brakes in 5th gear for the first corner here. Slight contact between Mitchinson and Anderson. They both gather it up just in time, but look who's coming, the bright yellow Mustang there of Kenneth Latta, who's trying to break further into the top 20 after qualifying didn't go his way. Luke Rosella there as well. He's fallen down the order.
Yeah, really poor start, and I think we're going to get a replay of it as well to sort of show exactly what went on for Rosella. Now he's got to recover, and he hasn't got a lot of laps now left, and there's contact up ahead of these guys. I think it might have been the 9.5 Sim Sports car that was just up there.
Yeah, potentially. Cameron Jones has Brenton Hobson now behind him. This is the replay of the start from Rosella's perspective, and oh my god, yeah, that was not a good start at all. The field just filing by him. I don't know how I missed that, but yeah, that is massive there for Luke Rosella.
Yep, final race of the night, final opportunity for points. What a poor time to get a poor start. Just missed it slightly. I was just listening to some of those engines as well in the run down to turn number 1 with everyone stacked up at the end of that first. Oh, McNamara!
Oh no. Okay, that's at MG, it looks like. He files back onto the circuit, out of the final corner, all on his lonesome. What happened to him here? He was right in the midst of things. Andrew Gilliam behind him after taking a penalty in the second race there, but it was actually the Phase 4 car of Paul Young that hit him around.
Yeah, and it was nearly like they had contact from Gilliam that was sort of nudging him wide. He was a little bit unsettled there, so something more's gone on. There'll be a breakdown of that and an analysis done by race control for sure, because not happy with Sean McNamara. But in the meantime, have a look at Rick Kuznetsov. A really, really strong opportunity to bank some points to the inside, James Scott. Well, it's going to come back to the left-hand side when they exit here, and Kuznetsov will get the left-hand run into Siberia. Scott's going to have to hang it around the outside. Highway and handsome. Kuznetsov back to second place.
Rick's driving a fantastic race right now. He did for most of race 2 as well. This is a Rick Kuznetsov that I've not seen before, but oh, it almost went completely wrong for him with James Scott trying to edge on the inside there coming through Hayshed. Is there going to be an opportunity at MG? No, there isn't. Kuznetsov has run that line a lot in race 2. He's going to defend again, as it's defensive also from Jordan Ross. He's trying to keep Madison down behind him for the last spot in the top 4.
Yeah, good luck, boys, because I think this is going to be another defensive masterclass whilst we watch Dylan Rudd skip clear. And this could be Dylan Rudd winning around.
Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Oh, no! Kenneth Latta around. And that's another Synergy car there, Jamie Stovold. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Kenneth Latta driving for Fishy Motorsports now. My apologies. I think I still thought he was part of Synergy for a moment there, but man, that is not what you want to see coming out of MG. Yeah, I'm surprised that didn't happen earlier in the night, frankly.
Oh, that's, yeah, I mean, nearly lap 1, race 2, right? So in terms of things, oh boy. And Ken Latter's been noted for an unsafe rejoin, which we got to see that one. So yeah, in terms of things. But at the moment, Down's going to apply some pressure here. James Scott gets to the inside. Rick Kuznetsov left that door wide open. I wonder whether or not he did leave that open from all the way back down at the southern loop. Contact as well deeper in the pack.
Yeah, the race is getting harder and harder for most of these drivers. Gibbs trying on the outside to keep his teammate behind him. So here's what happened to Latta. Looks like Brian Borg turned him around on the exit, and Latta just held the brakes. And, I mean, is that an unsafe re-entry?
No, that's not it. Watch here.
That happened afterwards. So Latta got going and, oh, yeah, righto. So that was one of the Synergy Mustangs that got turned around there. Meanwhile, Anderson on live pictures getting through on Bo Albert. That's lucky 13th now for Mr. Anderson. He's been having a lot of trouble tonight, falling very far from his race 1 victory. This is the onboard from Dylan Pereira of that earlier incident, and he got a mechanical black flag. Just, oh, those are some heavy hits there.
Yeah, multiple hits too. Where do you go? There's nothing he could have done. Just wrong place, wrong time. That's how racing goes. Oh Oh,
this
he's
is how
done.
racing goes. If you...
Pereira's still running. He's out in the track and his engine just blew.
Oh, no. Oh, dear. That's going to be a tow request from race control. We might get our first safety car of the night from that.
How's he ended up there?
Yeah, I'd love to know that too. That's a very awkward place to be stopped. Safety car has been called. Full course yellow. The Proven Energy Porsche Mission R will emerge onto the circuit momentarily, and we can get a chance to have a look at exactly what happened to Dylan Pereira. So his engine did blow. Oh, it's at a very awkward time. So the 9.5 car of Thomas Freeman is behind him. Engine goes pop. Freeman's still going. And that's how it happened.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So he's obviously got intake damage at that point in time. The engine's just not gulping, because that's unless he's gone for an upshift and grabbed a downshift.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, he already had the mechanical black flag from the contact with the latter incident. So maybe it was just the engine finally giving up after a whole lap out there, running at like 5%. Who knows?
Well, remember that they updated the damage model on these cars as well a while back and included the fluids dropping. So I'd say you're 100% right. I'd say he's run out of radiator fluid.
Yeah, that's probably what's gone on there. Good call. But regardless, it means that we have quite a few cars jumping into the pits here for varying reasons, mostly probably to get some fresh tyres on for another chance at lobbing themselves up the field. I know at the very least Kenneth Latter's going to be getting damage repaired. So, yeah, it's for everyone else, though, it's just a case of cooling the tyres off, getting ready for another run at it in the final half of this last race.
Well, there's a couple guys who came in for tyres there, and realistically, we're 5 laps into this race, so there is some heat that's gone into these tyres. There is some heat soak. There is a benefit here. If you were the last car in this train, you've got no track position. You may as well come down, bolt fresh tyres on, and see if you can do anything with it, because you're not going to lose any spots. You're only going to gain spots. So that's what they're doing. For Ken Latter, he's absolutely taking that damage repair, because, again, same thing. He was only ever going to go backwards on this restart. So let's do something with that. Let's try and push ourselves up the field, do something that we can possibly do. If he sits there and does nothing with it, always going to go backwards. So just try something. Get yourself out. Put the brain on. What can I do? Is there anything I can change about this situation? Yeah, I can take some damage here, take some fresh tyres, do something to really try and grab some points in the last half of the night.
Yep. Yeah, wow. Okay, so another moment to catch our breath. The track temperature has dropped back down below 30 degrees Celsius. It went up to as high as 32 during race 1 and sort of maintained that through the second race.
Look at that wind.
Yeah, the wind is still massive, isn't it? And that's a consequence of Phillip Island's geographical location, right? The Tasman Sea is right there. So, Pereira, meanwhile, getting hit in the rear on the way through there. Kenneth Latter obviously giving him a big smash in the front, but there was nothing that either of them could do about that. Latter had already been hit around by then and was out of control. Pereira was boxed in and there wasn't much he could do.
No, not really. And if you have a look at that shot again, right, there's no real center punch in terms of that radiator. It's just a chunk, because there was quite a few hits there. I would say either it's popped off a hose or it's punctured the radiator.
Yeah, either way, fluid leaking onto the racetrack and out of where it's supposed to be. I think Pereira was trying to get going, and that's why he didn't immediately go for the pits, but the engine was just too far gone by that point. So this is Brian Borg, the one who started all of this, just tapped Latter around and then it all went off behind him.
Yeah, so Borg's probably going to have a penalty to serve, and remember, field's been condensed, so that penalty is worth a little bit longer than it normally would be. Briggs has come to the lane now. There's a bunch of cars come to the lane. What's going on here?
Yeah, so Jamie Dyke is in there too, Ben Morris. Pereira and McNamara have been in there for a while. They're out. Kenneth Latter getting in for some more damage repair, it seems. But Ben Morris, I'm interested to see why exactly he's decided to come into the pits that time.
Well, it was tyres. All the cars that went up on the jacks right there took tyres. So
right.
What I'm looking at, though, is the pits was open the first time by. all they've done here is basically say to all the cars that came in for fresh rubber the last time around, oh, here's my spot for free. But coming in the first time around, you get caught back up to the chain, and then you're just going to slowly cycle through. If you come back around the second time, the only time is if you've ever got not enough fuel to make the end of the race. That's about the only time you want to do it the second time by. So that's
Maybe they thought they missed a trick.
But yeah, that's 100% what it is, basically. So they think they're going to go backwards, so may as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the very back of the field and you're trying to fight for those minor positions, you'll take every opportunity you can for a pace advantage when we go back to green. The tyres of the leaders here have already cycled through, and they won't have as much pace left by the time the race concludes. So, I mean, the drivers who pitted, they're not going to be up anywhere close to these guys by the end, but at the very least, they should be knocking on the door of maybe the latter part of the top 15. So it could pay dividends.
26 is the first car with tyres, so I reckon top 20, which, if they weren't going to get a top 20, that's a big win. Let's take a quick look at the live points, though, whilst we've got an opportunity, because safety car's about to come in. I'm really interested in where Dylan Rudd versus James Scott sits in the round results.
Yeah, so Dylan Rudd and James Scott currently separated by 6 points there. Kuznetsov still third, and that just goes to show how strong of a night he's had so far. Josh Anderson still ninth in the round points, so the race 1 win really coming to the fore there for him, and he could potentially gain a few more spots by the end of the race if he plays his cards right. So, here we go then. We gear up for the restart here. Dylan Rudd already away, and James Scott will follow him. Lobs Esports 1-2 at the moment as the green flag will fly, and everyone's already up to speed. V8SCOPS at Phillip Islanders go once again at the beginning of the 8th lap of 14. 7 laps to go. Half distance.
Yeah, and that's taken a few laps out of the maximum distance we need to go with tyres. Tyres are cooled off a fraction more, a little bit more grip. Oh, my word, Kuznetsov was sideways at the middle of Southern Loop. He's had to turn back down at the corner. That's checked Ross up, and now Madison Downs right up and underneath this rear wing of Jordan Ross. He's in trouble, gets a whack, nearly gets turned.
Oh, this is not good for Jordan Ross. He's had to really exhibit his car control there. Down in the meantime will keep Jake Maloney behind him. A little bit of a tap. Madison Down is not that kind of racer. He's not the kind of person to just turn someone around. He's one of the fastest drivers in the scene, but he's also one of the cleanest too, which is fantastic to see. So a little bit of a tap there. He's backed off. He's allowed Jordan Ross to get it gathered up.
Yeah, but that puts some heat in those rear tyres. That also puts Jordan Ross under a little bit more pressure. Hey, I'm coming. Hey, I've got pace. And the difference from Madison Down is he had a little bit of a run, quite close to that rear bumper when they got off the Southern Loop. And then he got double toe. So he got right there. That's why he's giving him that whack. You misjudged it, and he's misjudged that one by... If you're 2 centimetres further back, you don't whack him there. You don't whack him at all. So that's what the difference is.
Well, how much of a difference is there going to be at the braking zone for the opening corner here? And can Rick Kuznetsov keep all of these drivers behind him? Down, picking up the slipstream, but he's not going for the move into turn 1. So I think a smart maneuver there by Down. He knows that from that far back, it's not possible to make a move into the first 2 turns. Wow, yeah, I saw that too. Oh, change for the lead there, yeah. Dylan Rudd, James Scott into the lead of the race.
Dylan Rudd was wide. I didn't see what... I was looking at a couple of different battles, and I saw out of the corner of my eye. I looked up, and it was a black Speed Cafe car running off. There's only one of those up at the head of the field. There's a white one, but the black one was Dylan Rudd. Well, Scott's got the lead of this now, and this could turn into two race wins from the first 2 rounds of Scops, so that would put him top of the pile.
Yeah, here's what happened to Rudd. Nothing untoward happening. I think just got on the brakes a bit too late, and all the grip came out of the fronts.
Changing tyre condition, changing temperatures in those tyres. Could it have been the wind as well, Reese? Don't forget that as well.
Maybe indeed. The wind really plays a part in unsettling a car, especially if it's around 30 k's an hour. Look at this fight here. Jordan Ross still keeping the TTR trio behind him. Rayan Leonage can only look on. And in the midst of all of this, Kurt Stenberg has found his way into the top 10. There he is. Look at him.
He's doing a cracking job as Kurt Stenberg, and he's going to have a hard charge of Josh Anderson 2 places behind him. Every lap, Josh Anderson's picked off one more spot. He restarted 13th. Last lap was 12th. Now he's 11th. Is he going to crack the top 10 this time?
That is the question. There's Anderson chasing down the Synergy Mustang. He's on the verge of getting into it, but Tom Freer, we know, is a very quick driver in and of himself. Meanwhile, Luke Rosella trying to work his way up from perhaps a start that he wasn't looking for coming into tonight. Damian Johnston looking to lose 23rd position here to Paul Young, who, despite the damage that he has taken over the course of this race, still looking rather quick. You have to be quick to even get into this series in the first place. Replay, meanwhile, this is a lock-up here for Johnston, and that's it. Where is that? That's Southern Loop? It is. So, Dylan Rudd, not the only driver to be having issues at that corner.
Yeah, so that suggests the breeze is really playing havoc with their ability to get on the car, on the calipers, on the brake pedal, and retard their speed as they head down in there. So, look, in terms of things, it's not difficult. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult. Thinking the exact opposite said the exact opposite. No, it's very, very difficult to get the car pulled up. Like I said, I'm not capable of it. I'm not good enough to do it, so I can't imagine how these guys are sort of tracking. In the meantime, like you said, Rosella's responding. Gilliam, think about his night. He could have had a much, much better night, bar a different race one. So that's all that's really arrested him from being inside the top 10. That's changed the outcome of his night. Could have changed the outcome of his championship.
Yeah, sometimes it's something that happens in the early stages of the season that ultimately defines where you are at the end of it. So, you know, it's more work you have to do over the remaining rounds to overcome that deficit that you've put yourself in. Consistency is key, and no, that's not good there. Madison down, gets into the rear of Jordan Ross again, and this time there is heavy contact, and Ross is sent off at Miller. He's fallen all the way down to 14th behind Bo Albert.
Big old pinch of the brakes as he got sideways as well, and Madison, how has he arrested that and got out the other side? Just look at that big old whack. One was enough. One he wasn't that too happy with. Down redressed over that one. Well, now what do? You know you're copping a penalty if you Madison down.
Yeah, and I think Ross has fallen back too far for Madison down to really practically do the redress on his own. So, unfortunate. Down won't be feeling good about that. He doesn't like to hit people off, so he'll probably take that penalty on the chin if there is a penalty. 4 laps to go, one final replay. Jake O'Reilly through the last corner here. Is this running wide? It is indeed, over the grass, and oh God, that's dangerous. Coming to a stop right in the middle of the start-finish straight. Good on everyone else for avoiding him.
I think that was just after we went green too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, everyone was very close together there, weren't they?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, we've all got it running wide at the last corner here. Anyone who's raced here and not run wide at the last corner at the Southern Loop hasn't really been pushing the limits of the car too hard. Now things change up at the front though, because I've seen James Scott made a couple mistakes tonight. Have a look at Rick Kuznetsov. Maybe he does want to turn this one win into 2 in terms of the SCOPS series. He's got the pace, he's got the talent, and he's brought his way through that harsher part of the tyre where he really struggled. Well, look at where the safety car was. Really helped him out in terms of his tyre conservation. Now, look at the skills. He's transitioned from defense, now he's on offense.
Yeah, I've been monitoring this situation over the last few laps. It seems that since the restart, James Scott, yes, he did get past Dylan Rudd thanks to a mistake from Rudd, but ever since then, he hasn't quite been able to get away from him. If anything, he's been backing Rudd into Kuznetsov. So the race is by no means over for this top 3.
Yeah, we're going to have 2 laps left to run at this next time past the flag. 9 kilometres worth of racing action as they crest the hill out of the last corner here, Reese. Anything still to play for. Dylan Rudd's had a reasonable night, but boy, wouldn't he like to take a round win here.
Absolutely, he would love to. We'll keep an eye on the live points, of course. We'll see them again at the end of the night. My apologies. So the top 3... far enough ahead of everyone else that I don't think the likes of Madison Down are going to be much of a thorn in their sides. James Scott, I think with 2 to go, has started to increase the pace a little. He's a bit further ahead of Rudd than I saw him last time. But you see how he's angling his car towards the inside of the corner. Look at the angle that Brady Myers has taken there as he passes Jake Maloney to get into 5th spot. And Madison Down, the next car ahead, may have a penalty hanging over his head, so that could be a top 4 potentially for Brady Myers at the end of the night if things go that fashion. All the way up to Lukey Heights for our top 3. Are there any moves to be made here? I think they're too far apart for any realistic passes to be made. But you see how much James Scott is clambering over the curbs here. He's trying to find every bit of pace he can, widen the line through the corners, carry more apex speed, and it's working out for him now.
I'm just chomping at the bit. I wish this race was probably another 5 laps longer, because I think Rick Kuznetsov's not going to get there this lap. But 2 or 3 laps from now, he's going to be right on Dylan Rudd. And remember, Rudd's released to block him now because Rick Kuznetsov covered him like he wouldn't believe in that previous race. That says to me, that's what the standard is. If he's going to do that to me, I can reply in kind.
On board Madison Down, this is the incident he had with Jordan Ross, and yeah, you saw that Down did get on the brakes initially, but I think he was thinking about, maybe do I go more to the outside there? That's when he lifted off the brakes a little, but unfortunately stayed committed to the inside and went right into the back of the Synergy Mustang. Meanwhile, Bo, Albert and Blake Warboys side by side on the final lap into Miller. Are either of them going to get out of here in one piece? Yes, they will. Warboys briefly gets it done on Albert, but Bo comes back again at Siberia. Was there a little bit of contact there, I wonder? Warboys now has to leave the door open to the Synergy Mustang. That's the 143 of Jordan Ross, who's trying to get back a few more spots before they come to the line. But I don't think it's going to be done, at least until they get to MG. Final defensive move here from James Scott. The top 3 as close as they've ever been. There's nothing that Kuznetsov can do to get past Rudd. There's nothing that Rudd can do to get closer to Scott. So 3 races, 3 different winners. This has been an incredible night of V8SCOPS racing, and James Scott is going to put the cherry on top of the cake with the win in race 3, as close as it's ever been between Rudd and Kuznetsov for second. Madison Down crosses the line in 4th, but race control might have something to say about that. Cameron Jones ultimately getting 17th for 9.5 in the midst of that incredible pack of cars in the midfield. Everywhere you look, Scott, there was a race going on.
Oh, wasn't there? Up and down the field. This is going to be one of those weeks, I think, because the racing across the week has had... I can't recall there being a week in V8 Supercars history whereby we've had a race with drama somewhere within the week. Then we've had a phenomenal door-to-door banging battle to sort of recover. It's nearly like a reply. Wednesday night was sort of this launch of the week. The first race tonight was the reply, the response, the chess match. How do you deal with that? What's the responsive strategy? Race 2 was in the reverse grid masterclass. That is one of the best races I've ever seen. And then we finished with that one right there. All of the hinges, I think, in that final race became unscrewed just a little bit, because for me, James Scott made quite a few mistakes. Dylan Rudd made quite a few mistakes. Kuznetsov looked to be the most accurate of the drivers within those top 3, just didn't quite have the peak pace that he was chasing. It's been an awesome week. I love this business.
Yeah, me too. This is why we love sim racing. Fantastic night in V8SCOPS here. The spoils will go to James Scott, though, with very consistent finishes throughout the night. Same for Dylan Rudd as well. We'll go through the race results and then we'll check out the round results when we get to the end there. 1-2 for Lobs Esports. They have come ready to fight, haven't they? Fantastic stuff. Rick Kuznetsov, I think one of the star drivers of the night, though. After the 10th place in race 1, he converted that to second place in race 2 and gets another podium for his troubles there. Down crosses the line in 4th. Myers rounds out the top 5. Maloney completes the Trans-Tasman trio for the top 6. Leonage will split them from their teammates of Josh Anderson and Kurt Stenberg, and Tom Freer getting to the top 10 in the end. It was a steady climb up through the field. 4 positions gained in races 2 and 3.
Yeah, a reasonable night at the office, but then, you sort of look a little bit deeper and you say Luke Rosella, that's stalling that car off that grid. Boy, that's really cost him a significant race result. Brendan Hobson would be sitting there and going, yeah, I couldn't have run off the track. I could have had a better night. Scott Gamble in 15th. I enjoyed that drive from him as well. Brian Borg and Andrew Gilliam, 19th and 20th for Gilliam and Borg in that order.
21st on the road, Teo Sorono. It all went wrong for him in race 1, but he managed to find his way back up in races 2 and 3. Mitchinson, unfortunately, losing out in that one for 22nd place. Jamie Machado recovering from race-ending damage in race 2 to finish 23rd. And same for Thomas Freeman as well. Good job from those guys. Meanwhile, Jamie Dyke, Damian Johnstone managing to find their way into the top 30 after getting on the podium for split 2. And finally, Kenneth Latter. Well, he had a good race in race 2, but it all went wrong from in race 3 after that contact with Brian Borg. Ben Morris with a pit under the safety car to try and gain places. It didn't work out for him ultimately. O'Reilly will be the last finisher. Pereira and McNamara both retiring from that final race. So with that, we can look at our round results. The live points should be up here, and it is James Scott who takes it from Dylan Rudd. Still a 1-2 for Lobs Esports with Kuznetsov rounding out the top 3. Scott, fantastic stuff.
Yeah, and that's going to be 2 on the trot too for James Scott, which you've got to consider in the background. Because Netsov will look at that bank of points and will go, yeah, that's a great night at the office. I'm very, very happy with that. Brady Myers, I don't know, there was a couple of decisions in race number 2 I wasn't all that happy with. Madison Down will sit there and go, this is provisional, by the way, for him, because he's potentially going to cop himself a post-race penalty. Jake Maloney might move up a spot in terms of things. We'll have to see. Rayhan Leonards, Josh Anderson climbed his way back inside the top 10. I think he actually finished 8th at the tail end of that race as well. Luke Rosella. Think about if he scores a few more points in that last race because he lost a boatload of them. Perhaps he moves up 1 more spot, maybe 2 more spots in terms of things. Don't think it influenced his result all that hugely.
Indeed. Warboys and Stenberg 11th and 12th in the end. It looking like pretty close gap between Brenton Hobson and Robbie Gibbs. I think Gibbs would have been hoping to be a bit higher than that considering the issues he faced in race 1. Andrew Gilliam is the one that sticks out like a sore thumb to me there. Gilliam, I mean, his pace was good enough for a podium, wasn't it? But unfortunately just could not take advantage with everything that happened around him.
Yeah, Sebastian Flock, and remember that incident getting down the inside and getting into Josh Anderson in race number 2 as well. Damian Johnson wasn't likely to make the show tonight, made the show make a reasonable start of it. Ken Latta, it started in qualifying and the night just got worse and it got worse and it got worse. Jake O'Reilly had an okay night at the office. I think same thing for Jake O'Reilly, sort of got involved in a few squabbles that ended up in contact. Cam Jones has a reasonable night, which I've just skipped over in 23rd as well. Sorono and Young's going to round out your top 30.
Yeah, and finally, unfortunately, Phase 4 Motorsports had probably one of the worst nights there. Paul Young doing quite well, but Machado and Morris just not having the night that they wanted. Now we can move to driver interviews, and I think we'll go in round order. What indeed, James Scott, was that night from you? Fantastic run there in race 3. It looked pretty stressful from your perspective out there.
Yeah, car pace probably wasn't quite there tonight, so yeah, just had to sort of hang back and make some spots as they sort of presented themselves. Wait for the others to sort of burn their tires off a little bit, but bit of a test session tonight. Probably went slightly in the wrong direction, but yeah, overall to come away with the win, it's really good.
What do you think about the 3-race sprint format new to V8SCOPS for this year?
Yeah, I probably haven't had enough time to sort of think about it yet, but yeah, it sort of changes it up a bit, opens it up for a couple of new guys who maybe aren't so used to running near the front to get some laps out at the front of the field. So yeah, no, to change it up, it's probably a good format to run, a couple times a year.
Indeed. Well, big thanks for joining us, James. Congratulations on taking the round win with the lovely consistent finishes there. Anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, yeah, obviously all the guys at Lobs Esports been working really hard behind the scenes to get the car, where we want it. And obviously couldn't do it without our great sponsors as well, with Speed Cafe, Raco Performance, and yeah, all the guys, you guys for the broadcast and the series and race control guys as well.
Fantastic stuff. James Scott there, round winner for tonight. Second place, and the other Lobs Esports driver that was involved up the front, Dylan Rudd, stood by with Scott Rankin.
Mate, Dylan, that was an interesting night because, first of all, round race number 2, you had to go on the offensive to try and cover yourself, defend a little bit from the rear bumper. You and Rick, he blocked you, he covered you to the inside, and you still had to use that race brain. That looked like that was a boatload of fun.
Yeah, definitely race 2 was probably most fun I've had in a race for a while. So yeah, it's had to be smart just to pick where I had to pass so the J Ross and Rick didn't make it easy, that's for sure.
In terms of things though, you're leading, you've got a little bit of control of the pack, safety car restart in race number 3. All of a sudden you get down into the southern loop on the second lap after that safety car restart. We were looking at the wind here, it was blustering, it was really blowing about. And he just bowled a wide. Was that a little bit of wind? The car felt funny as you sort of got in there. It just didn't quite get on the brakes the way you wanted.
Yeah, as soon as I applied the brake, I just pinched the front left and yeah, just did my best to keep it on the track. So yeah.
In terms of things, mate, reasonable night at the office. Happy there working with the teammate. Do you think the performances have grown a little bit since joining the Lobs Esports outfit? Is this an opportunity for you to stick your name of authority? You think you're that next big name that you want to stick up in line?
Not sure. Yeah, I think I'd like to hope my performances are getting better the more laps I do with the guys. So yeah, definitely enjoying it and learning a lot. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Mate, and finally, floor's all yours. Sponsorships, thank yous, shout outs if there's anyone at home that you want to thank. Any fans in the audience at all?
Yes, I'd like to thank all the guys at Lobs Esports. So it's been good being a part of it and learning heaps. And then our sponsors, Speed Cafe, coming on this year, and Raco Performance.
Mate, congratulations. A phenomenal round result. P2, you'll take that every day of the week.
Yep, awesome. Cheers, guys.
And then finally,
Dylan
Reese, I believe you've got Rick Kuznetsov on standby.
Indeed, I have. Sorry about the transition there. Things obviously get a little hectic at the end of a SimSpeed broadcast. But Rick, podium for the round for you. And I think it was all defined by that 10th place finish in race 1. Obviously, it's not where you would have wanted to finish, considering you started in 6th, but it set up the rest of your night beautifully.
Yeah, it actually did, to be honest. Didn't really think about that, but yeah, race 1 was a bit of a disaster. I think we got the wrong way set up, and the car was just a bit average. But in the end, it worked out all right, and we had 2 strong races in the end.
What kind of car behaviour were you going for? Because Phillip Island, of course, a very fast circuit, very hard on tyres. Not as much of a problem with the sprint format, but I'm assuming you would have wanted a car that maybe was a little pointier?
Nah, the opposite. So the car was pretty pointy, but the rears just do not last, especially when you're in a lead with no drive. The car just does not want to stay in straight line. But in race 3, we got it dialed in, and then I felt so much more better. But it was a bit too late then. But overall, it was a good learning experience for Pro in a few weeks.
Yeah, indeed. Good preparation for that round. And also, 3rd place in the round for you, plus 3rd place on the road in race 3. Good haul of championship points as well for Altus Australia.
Yeah, definitely. It's my first good result of Altus, signing them this year. So yeah, it's a good moment.
Absolutely. Hopefully there is more to come, Rick. Anyone that you want to give a shout out to before we let you go celebrate your podium?
Yep. Big thanks to Logitech, Altus Engineering, Racetech, VRS, and just Altus Australia for all the work they've done in the background. And yeah, they've been good blokes in the background, sure.
Brilliant stuff. Rick Kuznetsov there, 3rd for the round and for race 3. Next round, Scott, we go to Watkins Glen. It's on the 14th of April, once again at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern. Don't forget, it's after the daylight saving transition. Daylight saving will end and we'll be on for 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if you're in the West or in Queensland, everything's going to be happening an hour later, so keep that in mind. But Watkins Glen, a classic V8 SCOPS track. I'm looking forward to seeing what it brings.
Yeah, man, it's an awesome track. Watkins Glen's always been one of my favorites. Look, I'm an oval guy through and through, and it's the road course version, and where we go to. But the same thing is I just love Watkins Glen International. Just a great race track, and again, it creates great racing in these supercars. So,
indeed, we hope that you can join us all for that as well. It's going to be happening in about 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks' time, all things considered. And we hope that you enjoyed the fantastic racing that went on tonight. Big thanks to the crew at Aussie Online Gaming for putting this whole show on in the first place. Jay Kennedy as well for putting on the broadcast show on SimSpeed TV on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. Whichever platform you've come from, we hope that you have enjoyed the show. I'm Reese Gardner, Scott Rankin with me in the comms box. Of course, Jay Kennedy behind the scenes. From all of us here at SimSpeed TV, we say bye for now. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, what little remains.